Okay, it's 1 o'clock, so I'd like to open up this Board of Aldermen budget work session, May the 21st, 2024. That's Alderman Board of Shoes.
Thank you. Let us bow our heads in prayer. Today, our Father, we thank you for the business at hand. We thank you for wisdom. We thank you for understanding. And above all, we thank you for strategies. May the conversations today lead to success as we come together. 45. Let your will be done, and we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, so number one is discussion and recommendation of the FY 24-25 budget. Mr. Hughes.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to start off by, let's just give you a brief review of your book itself, because we're going to be going through this. We're going to give you page numbers and things like that. But you're going to have tabs all throughout it. You haven't looked at this yet. It'll have introduction, that's what the manager's message is. We'll have a summary of a variety of reports that we're going to cover, information on staffing and positioning. Then it goes to the general fund departments. Then it will follow up with enterprise funds. In the back of your book will be a classification plan, which we'll go over later. And in front of your book, you'll see some information on capital and personnel requests. And you also should have, I think this was given out during the board meeting last Tuesday, a glossary of terms, just in case something's mentioned and you're not sure exactly what that is. We've got that there for you as well. So as we start off, we're going to just kind of review our budget timeline. So back in November, we started this process off by sending the governing board out a survey to see what you supported and what you didn't support in terms of whether a COLA was offered, if we had to balance this budget by pulling from fund balance, what you supported with that, as well as projects you wanted to see implemented. In December, we had our first budget work session where we talked about the follow-ups from the survey, and then we started off with our department heads with our budget kickoff and gave them directions for the budget process. In February, we had our Board of Aldermen annual retreat where the departments presented general information on capital expenditures that they were anticipating. And then the departments worked on their budget requests, and those budgets were due in late February. In March, we had the budget committee meetings where the departments presented their budget. And then in April and May, really the budget committee spent a lot of time going back and looking at the request to see what we could end up recommending to the board. So on May 14th, I proposed the budget to the Board of Aldermen, and today, May 21st, and tomorrow, May 22nd, we're in our work sessions. So again, when we developed this budget, we looked at the governing board feedback, department recommendations, and last fall we started the strategic planning process. As part of that strategic planning process, we looked at 5 overarching goals which I think everyone agreed upon. And so on page I in your book, you can follow along with this. This is in the manager's message. Those 5 main goals were excellence in government, and some of those things including modernizing operations to improve efficiency in various hiring qualified staff, providing citizens prompt and efficient service in a timely manner, embracing technology to improve employee and citizen expectations, collaborating with citizens, businesses, nonprofits, and other government agencies to address complex challenges that create positive change, employee recognition, embracing accreditation of departments, so far fire rescue, police, and parks and recreation have received that. Our finance department has applied for a variety of awards, and so far they've received the award for distinguished budget presentation, certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting, and popular annual financial report. Under safe and welcoming community, this budget will be looking at continued funding for ShotSpotter, replacement vehicles for police, fire rescue, and other departments, police canine replacement, police traffic monitoring trailers, replacement of self-contained breathing apparatus for fire rescue, security cameras in the park, replacement mowers, park restroom upgrades, $75,000 allocation for the new Craven County Public Library, and a variety of special events that the city offers. Under planning and infrastructure for balanced growth, we're looking at updating the Unified Development Ordinance, which we started in this budget year and continuing to the next. $100,000 for sidewalk and curb improvements, $460,000 for city street improvements, $250,000 for various water system improvements, $50,000 for various water supply and well rehabilitation projects, $350,000 for various sewer system improvements, and $200,000 for lift station rehabilitation, and the completion of the Discipline Stormwater Enhancement Project. For economic development, the Redevelopment Commission unit home projects and have the Wellness Convenience Care Clinic, working with consultants for highest and best use of vacant city properties, and working with consultants to attract retail businesses to Newbern. And then the allocation of the Craven 100 Alliance in the amount of $15,000. Community engagement, Newbern 101, pay channel upgrades, Newbern alerts, our monthly newsletter, social media engagement, community input through focus groups and public meetings, our community litter cleanup program, and volunteer opportunities. So as we look at our proposed fiscal year 25 budget, the total city budget is recommended at $155,421,881. That's a 4.1% overall increase compared to the current adopted budget. So today we are going to focus on general fund, and we're going to pick up on the enterprise funds tomorrow. So the recommended general fund budget for FY25 is $50,274,425. And so this budget includes 2% COLA for all employees, and general fund that amount to $514,000. Enterprise funds equal about $376,000. And we looked at the Southern CPI, and that's the Consumer Price Index, which monitors inflation as of the end of March 2024 for the year. That was 3.8%. This budget does not recommend any new full-time employees. We do recommend 4 part-time employees for Stanley Recreation Center. And this budget does maintain current level of service to our citizens. Under some budget impacts, we're still looking at increased cost of materials and supplies. With personnel, we had an increase of about $260,000 for this next year, mainly due to employee longevity and overtime, which we anticipate increases in. Then we're looking at the mandatory increase in North Carolina retirement rate, which is about $250,000. An increase in our insurance premiums, mainly for the Stanley White Recreation Center, and salaries and benefits. That accounts for approximately 66% of the budget. And as a reminder, the implementation from the salary study from 2024 carries forward in perpetuity $2.4 million annually. So with the general fund budget, where we started and where we are now. So the total requests that we received from the departments in general fund were $55,500,130. And on the cuts, as we went through and looked at things, capital requests, we ended up cutting over $2.6 million, and you can follow along with this on the PowerPoint. With travel and training, we cut $89,122, and with other operating expenses, we cut $2.4 million. And those operating expenses do not include salaries, benefits, or capital improvements. And so we get to the proposed budget of $50,274,424. So then we get to where the general fund revenues come from. And so if you want to follow along on page 29, I think is where we're going to be starting in the book. This page may be inaccurate.
It's right after the general fund tab.
Right after the general fund. So where do our revenues come from? So 23% come from sales taxes, 8% from intergovernmental revenues, 5% from other taxes and fees, 3% from interest earnings, 1% from miscellaneous revenues, 8% from interfund reimbursement, 8% from interfund transfers, 3% charged for services, 4% for receipts from debt, 1% from fund balance appropriated, and then 41% from ad valorem taxes. And so if you look on the slideshow itself, we're going to break it down and go into a little bit more detail on each of those funds and where those monies actually come from. So with ad valorem tax revenue, that accounts for 41% of our revenues. In 2024 valuation estimate breaks down by real property, $4.1 billion, personal property, $310 million, certified evaluation, $50 million, and registered motor vehicles, $430 million, which gives us that total valuation of $4.9 billion. Our current tax rate is at 38 cents. We are proposing a 3-cent tax increase, which would equate to $1,483,500. The proposed new rate would be 41 cents, which would bring additional revenue in total of $20,274,005 for ad valorem revenues. On the sales tax revenues, you'll see the chart here. FY24, the estimated revenue that we're expecting from the end of this year is going to be about $11.4 million. We originally estimated it was going to be around $11,750,000, and we're seeing that really flatten out. So we've had to make our adjustments on that. For FY25, this budget, the sales tax revenue is anticipated to be flat at 93%. So we're estimating revenues of $11,750,000. For our intergovernmental revenue, which accounts for 8% of the budget, HAL bill funds, we're anticipated to receive $1.1 million this year, and HAL bill funds basically go toward street and pavement projects. Then we have a variety of reviews. One of those is utility franchise fees, and that's $2.2 million. Beer and wine sales from the state, $135,000. Natural gas tax, $105,000. Telecommunications, $120,000. Video programming, $200,000. Public education program, which is our PEG channel, $25,000. And we normally receive those state distributions at least twice a year for that total amount. And then we usually get a one-time reimbursement from fire protection and also the fire marshal in the amount of $13,423. That total amount is $3.9 million in intergovernmental revenue. In interfund reimbursement revenue for shared services, which is 8% of the budget, those interfund revenues equate to, with the water fund, $1,055,000, sewer fund, $1,060,000, the electric fund, $1,825,000, solid waste fund, $201,000. That total revenue, $4,143,323. For the interfund transfer revenue, the water fund payment in lieu of taxes equals to $275,000. Sewer fund payment in lieu of taxes, $413,000. Electric fund, $347,000. The solid waste fund, $5,400. The electric fund, by state statute, there are two ways we can look at in transferring those funds, and we look at those each way. One is 3% of total assets, and the other is 5% of revenues. And 5% of revenues ends up being the most realistic, and you get just a little bit more out of that each year. So that's $721,000. And then we have MSD transfers, $42,000, and that includes addressing cleaning of the cup house and the fountain, and also funding the parking control folks downtown. Other taxes and fees revenue, 0.5% of the budget comes from this. By state statute, we have a beer and wine city licenses, and so we're limited in what we can charge for that by state statute. So we collect $3,000 for that. And just to give you a little bit more information, on-premise beer and wine permits that we issued, 77 throughout the city. Off-premise, 46 permits. I'd like to think in reality we get more funds out of that, but that's all we get by statute. Motor vehicle fees accounts for $161,000, and we're going to talk about the motor vehicle fees a little bit later on in the fees and charges. But we are mandated by state on what we can charge for that. We have been charging $5 for the tag fee for quite a few years for that. By statute, we can go up to $30. And the first $5 can be allocated toward general fund. After that, it has to be designated toward paving related projects. And then we also have the vehicle short-term lease tax, which we collect $80,000 in annually, giving us a total of $244,000. Charges for services revenue, that's 3% of the budget, and these come from fees and charges that various departments collect from. Police, $40,000, fire rescue, $30,000, parks and recreation, $449,500, development services, $825,000, and public works, $72,000. That total revenue is $1,416,500. And then we have some miscellaneous revenues, which equate to 1% of the budget, and that's miscellaneous rentals, $2,713, and that's basically from the ATM machine across from City Hall. Sales of fixed assets, anything we sell on Gov Deals, that's $220,000. Sale of any scrap metal, that's $5,000. ABC distribution, $110,000. Insurance proceeds that we may receive, $50,000. Public nuisance liens, $35,000. And then we've got the Green Park Terrace loan payments, that's $12,000 annually. That final payment is scheduled to occur on June 1st, 2029. And then the other miscellaneous revenues, which equates to $214,000. So total revenue under miscellaneous revenue is $649,664. So where do our general fund dollars go? So out of that $50,274,425, fire rescue gets 17%, parks and recreation 8%, development services 5%, public works 18%, our debt service and interfund 8%, our general government 4%, technology 4%, finance 4%, human resources 2%, and police at 30%. So on. Go into a little bit more detail on what I'm getting ready to cover. It starts on page 1 on some budget summary of all funds, but you can also follow along in this. So for general fund total expenses by department, general government, that budget increased a total of over last year 1.5%. Technology decreased by 9%. Finance increased by 6.5%. Human resources decreased by 8.8%. Police in 4.2%. Fire rescue decreased by 7%. Parks and recreation increased by 6.8%. Development services decreased by 0.1%. Public works increased by 5.7%. And the debt transfers continue to see that increase by 23.7%, which brought a total increase over last year for the general fund of 2.7%. Now on the next slide, what you're going to see is general fund operating expenses. So this excludes all capital, it excludes all salaries and benefits. So we're looking at the operational department and how that's affected. And so you'll see the percentage change again from last year to this year. So in general government, we had a decrease of 5.8%. For technology, there was an increase of 14.4%. For finance, an increase of 6.8%. Human resources was a decrease of 16.4%. Police, a decrease of 3.7%. Fire rescue, an increase of 35.1%. Parks and recreation, a decrease of 1.7%. Development services, a decrease of 17.1%. And public works, a decrease of 3%. And the main thing we're seeing in decreases technology was really more upgrades and software licenses and things like that. Finance had some finance modules with their software that we saw an increase in. With fire rescue, that increase was due to a public works restricted line item to replace the concrete in the back of the fire rescue department in the amount of $284,000. The decreases from human resources, we contracted with a new EAP provider, so we saw savings from that. Also, there was a reduction in travel and training, as well as IT from HR was reduced by $12,000. And development services, there was a reduction in professional services of $120,000. And then with Public Works, there was a little bit of a reduction. We moved some of the paving into capital fund as opposed to keeping it in their fund itself. So, now we're going to go ahead, if you'll turn to page 7, we're going to talk about some staffing and positions. And Tanya's going to go ahead and pass, if she hasn't done so already, she's going to pass. We've got an update for you. As we were looking through this, we saw that this was inaccurate. We are recommending no new full-time positions. However, we are recommending 4 part-time positions, and so those 4 part-time positions equate to 2 full-time. So that is where you will see on page 7, in general fund, our current budget year, we have 323 positions, and on the paper that you're receiving, you'll see that change to 300 full-time positions. This time I'm going to ask Sonia if she'll come up and go over the classification plan, which should be in the back of your book. And that classification plan looks like this. It should be in the sleeve on the very back.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the board. I'll quickly walk through the changes that are highlighted in red on the pay plan that is proposed for FY '25. So we can actually go over to page 2 of 5. So we'll see the first change in grade 14. There is a cross-connection coordinator position that we're looking to eliminate. Jordan is planning to do some things with a couple of positions he has. No new positions, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We just want to get rid of that title and clean up the plan. I'll explain more in just a minute on that. The recreation specialist under grade 14 is just a new title for a statewide recreation center position. Grade 15, there's a new title that we're proposing, enrichment coordinator, which will be a new title that we're proposing for a statewide recreation center position. And if we go down to grade 17, the fitness coordinator, same thing, new title proposed for a statewide recreation center position. In grade 17, the pre-treatment coordinator, what the director is proposing to do is to reclassify that pre-treatment coordinator position to a water resources program coordinator position at a grade 19. He actually had a position that was vacated by the previous pre-treatment coordinator. So he's looking to do some things a little bit different with that position, which would require a reclassification. So the person that he's looking at being reclassified to that position would then, their position would be vacant, and he's planning to reclassify that position to a lower graded position, which would be an office assistant. But the net effect is 0, so we're not adding any position, he's just reclassifying both positions, one up and one down. All right. Special projects coordinator. We're looking to reclassify that position from a 17 down to a 14 and retitle that to a recreation specialist. Grade 19, we just talked about that with the water resources program coordinator. Just explain to you what the director of water resources is planning to do with those 2 positions. Grade 20, just a title change in grade 20. Currently we have a position entitled Key Accounts Analyst, and the director is proposing to retitle that position to Utility Analyst. Grade 21, Budget Administrator. It is not a new position, however, it is a new position title. So the director is proposing to take one of the senior accountant positions that is already existing, and because of the scope of the functions that are really, really more associated or aligned with the budget functions, she's wanting to change one of the senior accountant positions to a budget administrator position at the same rate. All right, let's see. Grade 22, the city clerk, we're proposing to reclassify that position to a grade 24. And this is because of the increase in the scope of functions in that position, specifically relative to property sales. Those functions weren't captured in the previous description. We just feel like that position does deserve the warrant to be reclassified because of the scope of those functions. All right, let's see, grade 23, Land and Community Development Administrator. The director is proposing to change that title to a zoning administrator, and then we'll do away with that Land and Community Development Administrator position. And according to the director, that title, zoning administrator, is the title that is more prevalent in the industry, in the profession, if you will, versus the land and community development. Grade 24, we talked about the city clerk, so that one would be planted there. City planner would be a title change to historic preservation administrator. Same reason is identified before based on the director's indication that that title is more reflective of what you see out there in the profession. Grade 25, the assistant director, well, it says of technology, but that really would be the director of information technology. And the director is proposing to reclassify one of the existing information technology positions to an assistant director because of the scope of the functions that are being performed. All right, and then if we go down to grade 32, I think there's a change there. We indicated a strike through for information, but that would still remain as director of information technology. So those are the changes that are proposed on the pay plan for FY25. Thank you.
In the front of your book, you'll also see FY 24-25 personnel requests, and it goes into a little bit more detail on the department's requests. And you'll see in that while we are recommending the reclassification, we did not recommend any new positions. And there were some requests, and we're going to go into that in a little more detail with the enterprise fund. But there were some requests for adjustments for various positions because of the department head claimed salary compression and market value. We just went through a salary study, and so that salary study did not show that. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more during the enterprise fund. So any questions on personnel related items at this time?
I mean, I have some, but it might be better if we just do it by department.
Okay, well, we're getting ready to get to the departments and then by all means. So our next item, you can go to page 8. That is going to be dues and subscriptions. So on dues and subscriptions, the projected budget we have for general fund, $1,410. And that projects a 7% increase over this current year. Basically, that's just a pass along of if whatever association increased their dues and fees. If you have any specific questions from any certain department on this, we'll ask the department head to come up and give a little bit more explanation. So I'll just take a minute and look through that and see if you have any questions.
Do we know how many of these we are required to participate in versus how many are optional?
I can give you that information. I mean, well, each department head can probably answer that question for you right now.
So we've talked about the leading municipalities in the past, it's a big number, but in the past, they made presentations, showed us what they do for us. Does anybody know what National League of Cities membership is? It's not a big number, but I'm just curious, what do we get out of that?
We really haven't participated with the League of Cities on very many of the 10 conferences or anything like that.
Okay. And just so everybody knows, the Metro Mayors, we were a member of the Metro Mayors for, I think, four or 5 years. And I recommended that we discontinue that. It was either $8,000 or $9,000.
That's correct.
So that's not reflected here, but we went into that. That was another, it was a subcommittee of the League of Municipalities. It was supposedly formed to allow cities of larger size to have better representation. And I personally didn't see the value in it for the last year or so since I've been in this position. So we removed that one from the budget.
So is there support to remove League of Cities membership?
We don't need it.
Does everyone agree with that?
Also on, page 10 of the Parks and Recreation, there's a productive park software subscription. Could you tell us what that's for?
Productive Park software, that's actually going away. That is a work order system that the Parks and Recreation has been using for several years. We have recently citywide. George, help me, what's the name of that group?
So like the asset inventory, grass, yeah.
What's the name of the group we're using for
Oh.
work order?
Currently,
That you're getting ready to move?
right,
Brightly.
Right.
So we have a city account with Brightly to transfer over, and Parks and Recreation is due as well, so that will be.
Which one is that again?
Page 10, it's on productive park software subscription for $4,700.
What would be the cost for Brightly?
We already pay it from the enterprise fund, so it covers citywide. So there's not going to be any additional cost for the general fund.
Public Works Manager Plus annual subscription. Page 11.
that's
George, if you want to come up and.
that is a fleet management software for our fleet, for our garage facility.
The reason I asked the question, we started this off, what was required and what's not. I'm sure in police and fire, development services, there's continuing education requirements, things of that nature, especially water, sewer, electric, but not knowing how many of these are required versus optional. It's hard for us that we don't do it on a daily basis to say what's needed and what's not.
What we can do, because tomorrow we're going to start off with a follow-up. We can come back with you tomorrow and have an update for you to see what is required and what's not.
You're going to generate a list of required.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Alderman Ashford, Neptune,
Neptune 360 annual subscription, $20,000. On page 12.
What department is that under?
Water Fund.
Water.
I think, is Georgia still? We'll cover those tomorrow when enterprise fund.
Okay.
Mayor, when you're asking requirement, I'm speaking on a little bit of knowledge on the police side. Some of those aren't for certification, but it is for professional development training, and you can look at them. It's going to be hard to pull those out and say they're not required, but it basically are certifications and training that is done industry-wide. So, and I'm sure the fire is the same way, that it's not, you can't say it's not, that it's not required, but it is something that's needed.
I would say that this list probably deserves another scrubbing. You're talking about 320,000, that's all funds, but I mean, the lead was one, what was the other one, we cut $4,700 for Parks and Recreation.
Which other parts of it.
Yeah, I would just take another look at that and see what else. I mean, I don't know what the Netherlands Brotherhood do with the fire department is. I don't know how necessary that is, but it's $2,200. Any other questions on dues and subscriptions?
Okay, if there are not, if we turn to page 13, travel and training budget. Our current year FY '24 budget, there are $204,475. The FY '25 budget is reduced by 70%, $189,979. And if you have any questions, we're happy to have the department heads come and answer those as well.
I'll start off. So several of these have multiple staff attending. My question would be, is that necessary? Give a couple of examples. We're going to look at general fund, admin, city vision conference, city manager, assistant city manager, city clerk. That's 3 people. NCC, CMA, winter seminar, and summer seminar, both city managers. Finance, GFOA, CPFO program, 2 staff. Some of it I see training, I see what, that makes sense if you're sending multiple people to get trained, but if it's a conference, I've been to these conferences, most of you have been to these conferences. We're in a bit of a budget pinch right now, and I'm not sure sending multiple people to these conferences is the best decision, but I'll defer to city manager if you have any justified comments for this.
What we'll do is we will revisit that and we'll discuss that again tomorrow when we meet on GM.
And Development Services saw the National ICMA Conference with the director in Pittsburgh. Not sure about that. There's specific things, I would say on your summary tomorrow, if there are specific things and reasons all requested, it would be good to have that for us to know. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's something specific at that particular conference that somebody needs to go see and hear about. But again, for us to filter through this, we can know that information. I know that rodeo was really nice for the lineman to go to, but it's $10,000. That's an example of what I'm talking about.
Under the emergency support, is that encoded training, dispatch, 7 telecommunicator, is that an annual certification of some sort?
Chief?
I'll have to get that specific answer to you later. I'm not exactly sure if it's an annual requirement, but I'll check on it.
Thank you. Vice, if you would, also on page 17 at the bottom, it's first basic climbing school for electric ground workers. Make sure I got it right. that's not it. It's the, from the rodeo all the way down to, advanced lineman school, first class and second class. Is that another, just a training to certify them as first class lineman and second class lineman? That required annually or?
We'll get verification on that.
Okay.
And then also, if that is a certification that helps with professional development, do we protect ourselves from those individuals leaving? So if a lineman gets certified and gets higher credentials and he leaves after he gets certified and goes to work in the private sector or another municipality, do we recoup any of that? I know in my world, we charge for that. So.
Right, currently we do not.
I'm sure the attorney could help us out if we wanted to draft some sort of agreement. I mean, it's pretty simple. Somebody goes to get certified, they sign and say they're going to stay employed for 2 years. If not, they repay that. I think we had this discussion in the past. I think we've done that maybe in certain other positions possibly. Anything else on travel and training?
Boss, do I have an answer to Alderman Masters? Yes. Didn't take long for me to get that, Alderman Masters. So the 911 support training is a requirement for EPD, EMD, and EFD, that's emergency fire dispatch, medical dispatch, and police dispatch, and recertification into PCs.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I would say foster just some consistency on some of them. I'm looking at notary force police for page 13. It says 2 for 300, and then development services, they have 2 staff going to notary class for 150, and then electric has, just says various public notary for 840. So not disputing that may or may not need public notaries, but they budgeted different.
Yes, sir.
Those are the ones that found.
Any other items on travel and training that you'd like for us to address?
Last one I had was basic meter school, the UBO division staff, 7,500. I thought with AMI, I thought we were getting away from that.
We'll get on that.
That might be meter repair stuff.
Any others today? Yeah. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to capital expenses. If you want to turn to page 19, we've got a full layout here, and then also, Tanya, if you could pass out some information. You're going to see on the handout, you're going to see some images of the items as well, so that may help you out. We're going to go through these. So under general government, we're recommending $15,000 for security system updates in City Hall. And that basically comes from the annex on the three main entrances on the first, second, and third floor, come into the old annex. We've already got a camera system in there. we really don't have a controlled access, and so what we're looking at is a way for folks to buzz in if they come in that way. It's more for security. Every once in a while, we'll get surprised with people walking into City Hall. Right now, they have two ways into the building, the old entrance from the steps and this way as well, so it just helps us with security of the building. On the PEG channel, I'm going to save my comments for that when we get into the administrative department budget, and then we're going to talk more about that. Same thing for the closed caption portion. Under technology, we are recommending for wireless network firewall, $28,000. For police, we're recommending a replacement K-9 dog in the amount of $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000, $20,000,
Wouldn't want to do is have a non-police employee be a custodian of any of our records or any of our property. So technically, we could put city property in our property and evidence, but it would be under our dominion and control. We'd have to maintain it for a variety of reasons. We would never allow a non-police employee. In fact, I'm the chief of police. I don't even go in there because part of any chain of custody on any of those evidentiary items in there. So I hope I answered your question in a roundabout way.
Yeah, you did. Foster, just a follow-up question. I mean, do we have any record storage needs throughout the rest of the organization?
Mainly, we're looking at two different departments, one finance and HR, and they're required to maintain those records for a certain amount of time. And those records are kept at an off-site location where they're secured and they meet state statutes on that protection. We don't have a specific place here, a storage building. We normally have that off-site. And so that has been working out pretty well from what I understand from both of those departments.
Yes, it takes time to get those documents, and it's costly.
And no other departments are having any issues, record storage?
We haven't heard from any of the other departments on that, so I don't think that's been an issue.
I'm just, again, alluding to, is there a bigger picture issue that we should be dealing with other than just the police department, and it doesn't sound like there is.
Right.
So we just need to focus in on the chief's request.
So the other request, and you'll see what we did not recommend under the police, did not recommend the hydraulic rams. We did recommend the traffic data boards, 14 cruisers and one animal control vehicle. And fire rescue, we are recommending self-contained breathing apparatus. We did not recommend the fire engine this year. We did find out, we just placed an order for a fire truck, and we're looking at almost 4 years for that to come in, so whenever we put that in the budget for another fire truck, it's not like we're going to get it in the same budget year, so really didn't see the urgency, especially considering where our budget is looking this year.
Are we financing fire truck?
Yes,
How long?
it's, with this, it's just under 5 years. It's with the, vehicle and equipment loan that we just did in the fall.
So on this 93 something says work order year to date about 76,000. Is that year to date through our fiscal year or calendar year? Any idea?
I think that is,
Total
yeah.
to date, yeah, all the years.
Okay, so that's not a year to date, that's a,
Birth.
because I'm starting to say, if we're spending that much a year, you're better off buying one, because your debt service is not equal to that.
Does the fire department still need those, the SCBA's, since we ordered some with the new truck and used some of the FEMA money for that?
I believe so. We haven't heard back from FEMA yet on whether they will allow the SCBA's, and so that's why we have this still in this budget. If the FEMA request is denied, then we would still be able to get it. If FEMA approves it, then we would not be purchasing this. We also have a request for some replacement service vehicles in the amount, at least one vehicle in the amount of $60,000.
So Foster, going back to the scatter units, I understand the logic and put it in here in case FEMA defines it. But we're also having to balance this budget and cover that expense. Would we not be better off to take that out and FEMA doesn't approve it and come back and do a budget amendment later?
We can certainly do that.
I mean, that's,
You can't purchase them until FEMA approves it, so I don't know if they need them regardless.
No, yeah, here he is.
How's everyone? So to answer your question, the actual SCBA that you see, those were not part of, they would have been part of the actual FEMA grant itself, but those are specific to seated positions as far as the apparatus. Those are specific to the rescue, so that would have qualified for the FEMA grant. I do believe that if it's a delay on receiving those, again, being attached to the grant with this new engine, that would still suffice. Is that what you're asking, as far as the timeline on receiving?
so we need these regardless of whether FEMA approves it or not?
Yes.
If FEMA approves it, we're getting more.
If FEMA approves it, then it would just be the same ones. Is that what you're asking?
We can pull this out of the capital request, and if FEMA does not fund, then we can come back with a budget amendment.
Are these for your quick response vehicle?
No, these would be for the actual rescue. So these are the large bottles. These would be the ones that you would apply to the rescue side. So the actual SCBA that you normally see the firefighters in, those are the ones that are specific to your fire engine, to your truck or your Quint, and that's the reason why they were covered under the original FEMA grant. Because these are attached to the rescue unit, that's still part of the same setup, they wouldn't have qualified for that original grant.
Thanks, Steve.
In part,
I got a question concerning this fire engine.
yes, sir.
Last year, they requested one and a refurb. We decided that we didn't want to spend that kind of money on a refurb, so we decided that we would just get two new ones. Then things changed, and we decided to do a change of scope of work, to take some FEMA money to buy the fire engine that we needed last year, but we have forgotten all about the second one.
No, we didn't, because I asked multiple times of this board if you wanted us to proceed with this, and we never got direction.
Well,
So we did bring this up multiple
okay,
times.
I don't recall, but anyway, considering, depending on what fire truck you buy nowadays, it's up to 4 years to take delivery. Don't you think that we should be a little proactive in ordering, go ahead and get something ordered, knowing darn good and well that we're gonna need it within 4 years, 4 years down the road, we'll have something. I mean, we've had one on order now. Is it still taking 4 years, Chief?
As it stands right now, they're still saying 48 months. We'll know a little bit more along once they get further into the specs.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I know some of the companies are backing off of that 4-year stuff now. I was speaking to a manufacturer the other day, says he's at 18 months, 18 to 24 months. So things must be easing off a little bit. But I'm just wondering if we shouldn't be a little proactive here and at least get something budgeted and ordered if it's gonna take 4 years to get in. If we wait for 4 years to order it, now we're 8 years out, and these guys, was this a Quint that had all the water damage?
To my understanding, the unit that had the damage was a Quint. That's correct. Which would be ladder 1.
we messed up when that happened. We should have had the city attorney involved in having that truck claimed as a total loss and made the insurance company replace it. Now we've got nothing but problems with it because it was flooded, and everybody here knows that you can't repair a motor vehicle that's been flooded because all the electronics and computers and everything. So bottom line is, I'm just wondering, and I reckon it's a question to the board, if we shouldn't be a little proactive here, knowing again that it could take up to 4 years to get a truck, knowing that we've got one that's been flooded and it's giving constant problems.
I guess my question is, when do you pay for it?
Well, that's a two-part question as well. You can pay for it up front, or I'll let Kim answer that.
Usually there's, several options. You can pay 100% upfront or 25%. So, that's what we did in the last one. We will add it to the capital, and then to the borrowing as well. So, we put a deposit on it, and then we pay the balance when it gets delivered.
So we were originally intending on buying one out of general fund expenditures, and then we went with the FEMA option. So that one kind of took care of itself.
Well, we haven't received approval from FEMA yet, and that was no.
So I guess my response would be is if FEMA approves the one we put in for request, we probably should look at a second one, because this one's a 1993. That's pretty old. Is this the oldest?
Is this is the split cab, isn't it?
The
First one that we bought?
Engine 5 is the oldest been the 93, yes.
Yeah. You got a clue the number of hours on it, Chief?
I don't have the hours currently.
What we can do, if the board prefers, whenever we hear back from FEMA, if they do approve that fire truck, then we can purchase at that time based off that. Because we did, using general fund dollars that were already allocated, that's what we used to pay for this fire truck.
So if that were to happen, the second truck, do we have space to house it?
Oh, yeah, but we'll do away with one. We'll probably send it to, well, I'm speaking as if I'm the chief.
Chief, come on up.
So the 93 that we're speaking of, as far as which would be a deadline unit, my recommendation, if you get to that point, is to apply that unit by using it for training purposes only. It would no longer respond to emergency, which would take off some of the additional wear and tear of your primary units. For instance, when you have a driver who's going up for engineer or for the driving status, they have hours of time that they have to do bucket scenarios to be qualified. So that unit still has the capability of doing that, only apply for that purpose, which would take some of the wear and tear off of your primary units and hopefully over time reduce what you're seeing costs associated with those. But I would not use it as far as emergency purposes anymore, or as a reserve, based on that age and the additional cost that you would be incurring in that particular period.
Or we could donate to Creighton Community College for the new training center that they're going to build.
That is correct.
Maybe that would help offset some costs versus some people that would work in agreement with them down on that.
Foster, has it been the policy of the city to essentially pay cash for these fire trucks as opposed to the bond ordinance? So you have vehicles that have a useful life, use this one for an example. Here's a 30-year-old vehicle. So they qualify for financing. I mean, but I don't hear us talking about financing as an option.
So all of our vehicles we do finance. For example, last year, what was our loan for all vehicles?
Just under 5.
$25 million to purchase all vehicles. And additionally, those loans are 5-year loans, so we pay over those 5 years for it. Same thing with the fire truck this year, we got a loan for that, so paying for that.
We could extend the next one out longer, seeing that it does have a longer useful life than the other vehicles.
If we have an opportunity to finance capital, we traditionally do, if it qualifies.
So you said this one's, there's one already budgeted in the current budget that we paid for? Is that what I understand?
That's what we use the funds for.
So if FEMA approves buying it, then we'll basically move forward with what we've already approved, and we'll use the FEMA funds to buy a second one.
And it's reimbursable.
Is everybody clear on that one?
Well, I understand that argument, but looking at the whole budget, not just fire department, you've got funding in the current fund budget of upwards of $1 million to buy a truck, by cash flow.
I think it was gonna be.
No, it's cash.
Yeah, there's debt proceeds that offset that.
I'm sorry?
There are debt proceeds that offset that in the budget. So we are planning to go out for, financing on several capital items, vehicles and equipment that meet the criteria.
Including the fire truck that was approved by the board previously?
That was on the FY
That's
'24.
in this budget year.
Yeah.
Not for what we're talking about now.
That's in our current year right now.
Okay, I'm getting confused from the number of vehicles that,
Right, so for this coming budget year, what you'll see there is currently recommended $2.6 million in capital requests, and we're able to finance 1.8 million of those. The majority of those are vehicles of some sort now. And currently, that does not include a fire truck outside of what we've already done. That was in our current budget year. But if we do hear favorably from FEMA, then we would basically use those funds to purchase a fire truck.
and that frees up money that was budgeted in the current year budget for a fire truck. That's what I'm understanding the discussion.
Not in the current year, since we just purchased the truck.
We've got one on order
Right.
that's in our current budget we're operating in right now. There's nothing in this proposed budget that we're looking at that talks
No, I'm
about.
not talking about proposed, I'm talking about the current budget.
Right.
So that one's already been ordered, that one has been spent.
Yep.
Yes.
Financing there as well.
Okay. I thought the discussion though was that if FEMA approves the use of FEMA money, then we would offset that current fund expenditure with FEMA dollars.
We could do it one of two ways. If the board did not want us to purchase another fire truck, yes, we could pull those funds for this budget year and get that back for the existing truck.
Purchase.
Or we can purchase another truck.
Right. Let's take that argument one step further. When do you expect if FEMA decision?
We would like to say we would like to have heard from them by now, but I think we've been dealing with this request for at least 4 months now, waiting to hear from them. And
So if we don't hear anything back from FEMA or this budget is adopted, then FEMA's decision will have nothing to do with the current budget, which will be last year's budget.
That's correct. That's correct.
So if FEMA says, yes, you can use FEMA money, that would go into next year's budget for a fire truck, another fire truck. Using
Yes.
FEMA dollars will be in the 24-25 budget, not the 23-24 budget.
That's correct. It would be a budget amendment.
So the end result will be, we'll have 2 new trucks on board.
That's correct.
that you can use their dollars for. And I kind of go back to my question then, we were saying, right, we'll use FEMA dollars to order a second truck, or are we not saying that? I mean, we have a truck on order out of this year's budget. If FEMA says you can use FEMA dollars, then we're going to use FEMA dollars for the truck that's on order.
So what I've heard so far, it seems like there's support for a second truck. So we would use those FEMA dollars for that second truck.
Well, but that's the point I'm getting to is when we're looking at the pressures of the budget process, your recommendation of the 3 cents tax increase, which chances are there are members of the board who are not going to be supportive of that. So we're going to be looking at trimming the budget dollars. To be making a decision right now to commit ourselves to a second truck when if FEMA says yes, that we'll use FEMA dollars, that frees up current fund money that could be used to just let it lapse into surplus, and you now have additional money available to help balance the upcoming year.
Yes, I don't recommend adding a truck into this next budget until we do hear something back from FEMA.
My concern is I'm not thrilled with the concept of committing to purchasing a second truck right now until we have a decision.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. So when you get a decision from FEMA, you put it on an agenda and say, we've got approval from FEMA. Is the board now ready to take action on ordering a new truck with the FEMA money to reimburse us? Does that make sense? Because if you were to do what Alderman Krill said and take the FEMA money, if they approve it, to apply to what we've already obligated ourselves for, you're only going to save the annual debt service for that truck. It wouldn't be the full amount. It's not like you've got $1 million from FEMA coming into our budget. It's only going to cover the annual cost of the debt service, but we've already got that built into our current. That's right.
Yeah, I think I could probably amend it, and use some of the capital that's coming up 25 to apply towards that loan as well, and reduce the amount we have to borrow for FY '25.
I just know how FEMA
Yeah.
is, and the more complicated we make it, the longer it's going to get
Yep.
drawn out, and maybe not even go the direction we want to do. So I'm just trying to think simple. If they approve our request for a fire truck, and come back before us and say, we've got FEMA approval, do you want to buy a second truck? Then we can have buy a second truck or apply to the one we've already purchased. Makes sense?
Yeah, I think what I'm really driving at is, and if I missed it, I apologize. I don't see and I'll just use the fire department as an example. I'd like to see a list of all vehicles, what their age are, and the anticipated replacement time frame for those vehicles. So if we've got, I don't know, Chief, how many trucks do we have?
So currently you have, primary units, you have, two engines, 2 ladders, and the tower, which are your primary units over 3 stations. And then you have the reserves to that being the 4 and 5, which we just discussed as far as being the one that's deadline. And the tower, so 1, 2. So I'll give you the exact number here.
Well, what I'm really getting at is the 8 vehicles, 10 trucks, or whatever. These are vehicles that have generally a long life, 20, 30-year time frame. And I would certainly argue that those types of big number when we're looking at our operating budget. That's where the financing comes in. I mean, yes, over the long run, you're going to pay more for financing. but you're sharing that cost not only with the current taxpayers, but the future taxpayers as well, who are gonna benefit by having vehicles replaced on a regular schedule. So I'd like to see, for all of the departments, you know, the larger vehicles are all in stock, is just to see that kind of a projection of what we have, what their current age are, what their anticipated life span is, and when we need to be looking at replacement. It gives it just a bigger picture.
Right, so what we can do, and we'll most likely do this tomorrow, we have a 5-year capital plan, and so they didn't include it in this budget, we'll provide it tomorrow, that way you can see what each department has requested over the next 5 years. And that should help you out some.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. Yeah, that's okay.
Any other questions on fire, rescue? In Parks and Recreation, the capital recommended security cameras. This would be from Martin Marietta Park, Henderson Park, Pleasant Hill Park, and that would round out, with the exception of Glen Burnie Park, security cameras in all of our parks. A blower, tractor mounted, to help clear debris. 4 replacement mowers for mowing crew. And on the second page of, the next page of that, rebuild some fishing piers along Lawson Creek. And park restroom upgrades to include painting, new urinals and toilets and sinks, and new flooring. And then 1 replacement vehicle, and that replaces this that is no longer in operation due to its age.
Also on the replacement mowers, this is out of Parks and Recreation. Do we have mowers in other departments?
It's basically Public Works and Parks and Recreation. I believe Water Resources has a few mowers.
It seems like, and I think this is the 10th year now for me, but it seems like we just bought several lawnmowers. Do we know what department?
Probably for another department. In Parks and Recreation, they have a 5-year replacement schedule, and that's normally what we go with all of those mowers.
This fishing pier at Lawson's Creek, where is that at?
Behind Trent Court, we actually have, it's either 4 or 5 fishing piers along there. And several of them are in need of help of lumber replacement along the way.
That at Morgan Park?
Right along the Riverwalk.
Leander Morgan.
Leander Morgan Park? You got 5 piers there?
There's a total of 5 with the one behind Bern Towers.
Are they all used?
Well, they're closed right now because they're not safe.
How long have they been closed?
Almost a year.
Do we have the option of using the Trex type of product as opposed to pressure treated wood?
We do.
I mean, heat pressure treated wood doesn't survive for long periods of time in that environment.
That's correct.
Even if there's any kind of concrete product that can be used.
And I believe the majority of those piers were installed with some type of grants at some point along the line, and they've just, in reality, those piers have outlived their lives. It's time for replacement.
Was this addressed in the master plan?
I believe it was. Carrie, can you address
They
that?
were in the master plan.
And how well were they utilized prior to closing?
I mean, people use them frequently for fishing and just
you know, being out on the water there. I can't tell you how frequently, because we don't have anything to track that with, other than visually.
I mean, we're adding one, it's gonna be a nice one, where people get out and catch fish. I didn't even know we had 5 back there. So, is this to replace one of the 5?
That is to replace the decking on 3 of those, I believe. And that's with staff doing the work.
Any other questions under Parks and Recreation? Under Development Services, there was a request for 2 new vehicles. We denied both of those requests. What we will end up doing on that is, as we purchase new police vehicles and they come in, we will basically.
Let me go back to Parks and Rec real quick and the fishing piers. Since they've been closed, has there been any comments from citizens, any questions, wondering when will they reopen?
I've had a few calls. I had one gentleman call who was selling a house close by, and he was complaining because they were closed. We receive frequent calls, but not daily.
Thank you.
So, if, let us know, if you don't support this, let us know, and we can certainly address it.
I'll probably ride out there tomorrow morning and just look out. If there's 5, I knew there was the one right behind, the fairly new one right behind Trent Court, where their admin building was, next to Fort Commons. And then I knew that there was one behind. I didn't know there were.
There's some additional ones in between those 2.
Okay. I mean, there's not, between the one at Trent Court where the admin building is, there's not a lot of residents along that area anymore. So,
Is the Leander Morgan Park Pier still, is it closed? Is it one of them that's closed?
All these are along that river walk at Leander Morgan Park. So that entire green space from where he's talking about down by the old housing authority, all the way to Newbern Towers. These are all within that span.
So what you're saying, you need to know something from us to go ahead on, start the process.
Just give us direction if you, we'll verify with grant, I don't know what kind of grant we had that with, but if the board does not support this, then we do not have to fund this, and we can make adjustments to it.
so let me ask you this, this is to fix 3 of them, so it's $35,000. That would put treated wood back on 3 piers. If we were to go with what Alderman Creel recommended, could we make one of these a Trex and use material that will last longer and have one nicer pier versus 3 that have wood on it? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, we could, with that amount of money, we could see how far we could go, and it could be 2 piers, I'm not sure, absolutely.
Well, let's get together tomorrow and go to take a look to see what's going on.
Foster, I guess just one question. If grant funded, once used to build the piers, whether there were ever any restrictions on, once built, you have to make it for, who knows how long.
Right, it all depends on the granting source. Most likely, if it was CAMA funds, we would probably not be held to it once it's lived its life. And every once in a while, CAMA will allow to basically use funds to refurbish things that they've already funded. If it is something like a land water conservation fund grant, which we don't know, we have to look that up, then we would be required to maintain that in perpetuity. But staff will do that research and we'll have some answers on that. Any other questions or comments on that? Public Works. For the garage, recommending a shock rubber. For the equipment class 5 service vehicle, $225,000, and this services all the heavy equipment, so they would actually go out on site and service vehicles, not a tow truck, but it actually goes out. There they have the ability to change tires and replace batteries, and they've got all the things they need right there. Service vehicles with work body, they're requesting 3, and these are to address replacements in the existing fleet. The replacement of utility tractor, and that's replacing the tractor that's 22 years old, and there's several repair issues.
Plus on the service vehicle, make sure I understand, it says the amount requested, okay, 65,000 each. And they're recommending that, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Then the purchase of a 62-inch Alamo side mount mower attachment with the current tractor. Progressive thumb for the excavator. Traffic control cabinets and structural supports for our traffic control boxes. Skid steer pickup room with a gutter attachment.
Let me ask you a question, it has nothing to do with this. Speaking of traffic control boxes, did we ever take care of that one that was over near Kathy Adolph that was?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That was elevated, I believe, a few feet.
Yes.
Question, the heavy equipment class service vehicle, that's not replacement. Do we already have one?
We do not. That would be a new vehicle to their fleet.
Thank you.
And George, if you'd like to come up and address, we did add a new position, I believe it was last, heavy duty or diesel mechanic. And we started bringing those things in to help. It was more cost effective to do those repairs in-house as opposed to sending things out and taking forever to get things fixed. George, if you'd like to address that?
Yes, we had an existing heavy equipment mechanic, and then during last year's budget, we got approval for a second heavy equipment mechanic, who's following up on what the city manager said about where there was a cost savings due to labor rates and parts every time we had to use an outside source for our heavy equipment. Now that we have the second position funded for a second heavy equipment mechanic, the utilization of a secondary heavy truck, and that includes everything from it's got a crane on it, it's got a welder. They do approximately 50% of their work in the field. So when a piece of equipment goes down, most of the time they go in the field and repair it. So it's not necessarily back in the shop. So that's return to service, and it also better utilizes the staff.
So George, are we seeing a corresponding decrease in the operating budget for not having to outsource repairs?
We did an analysis over the first 3 months when we had this position funded, and yes, we did see a savings from not outsourcing. It's got to do with the high labor costs. Labor costs to outsource a lot of times to $160, $180 for every equipment.
I think Alderman Trill was asking, is that reflected in the proposed budget, that savings? Is that what you're asking on?
Yeah. It's difficult to say with the inflationary pressures on parts now. So, yes, we are better off day to day than we were during last year's budget just because of these savings. And I'll also have to say the return to service on our equipment is much faster. So when we send one out, it gets in line. When we can do it in-house, we can put them back into service.
Continuing on, Public Works replacement of a single axle dump truck, replacing a 1998 model.
George, I'm going. This is the next one I want to ask, and I was catching before you sit down.
Including sidewalk and curb improvements in the amount of $180,000, roadway improvements in $460,000.
Whoa, I'm sorry, you went too fast on me. I want to talk about sidewalks.
Okay, sidewalks.
George, is there any plans, or do you have any thoughts on extending the sidewalks down Oak Road?
Yes, and I've had some discussion with Alderman Brenson as well, and we've had an identification not only through our existing blank bid plan, but also through the blank bid committee. They had actually at our last meeting an opportunity to vote on 5 of their primary concerns or areas of concentration, and one of those was Oaks Road. For us to get to the point of utilizing Oaks Road the right way for a sidewalk, one, we need to establish what we have for right of way, and then what encumbrances, whether it be bridges, creeks, roadside ditches, drainage, those types of things that we'll run into. So, my recommendation on this is going forward, I think, at least for this upcoming year, we would like to use appropriated sidewalk money for an engineering firm to go out there and do the survey, identify these things to get us a plan to figure out, one, which side we need to go down for feasibility issues, and what we would have to do to get down that, so we can start working towards connecting Pierce Field to Martin Marietta Park.
George, I think we did that when Matt was here, because when we repaved Oaks Road, Alderman White wanted sidewalks, and Matt came back and had an engineer look at it, and the cost was just astronomical.
I'll speak to that, because it was our firm that gave him a price. We did not actually do a survey.
Okay.
So, but we're getting to the point of, if we can get Martin Marietta Park attached to Pierce Field, so down Oaks Road, you would be able to walk from Martin Marietta all the way through town, all the way to Lawson Creek Park. So you could do the entire loop to the parks, and that is the last piece to get us to Martin Marietta.
I guess I'll mention this now, it's probably a better time. With our election being next year, and it's gonna be the only thing on the ballot, I really think the board should consider a bond referendum that would go on that ballot to complete our bike and pedestrian plan and whatever other projects we wanna look at, whether it's the parks and recreation. To me, that is an ideal time, because the people that's gonna come out and vote, they're gonna be hopefully educated and engaged with local government, and they're gonna know whether or not they want to spend tax dollars on completing these projects, because we hear all the time that we have all these plans on the shelf and we never complete it, because it takes money to complete it, and then when you talk to people about, do they wanna raise taxes to pay for this stuff, they don't want to. So this, I think, would be an opportunity. It's a project that's already put together, you've got a bike and pedestrian committee. I mean, to me, that one is a no-brainer. And then let the public decide. If the public votes down that decision, then in the future, when people ask for things, we can say we put it before a vote and the public voted it down. That would be my suggestion on that.
And a bond plan, a bond referendum on the whole plan, or
Yes.
prior to? Okay.
I'll do the whole plan
Okay.
and get it.
Looking through prioritization, but that was,
Yep.
again, piecemeal, not,
Yep.
okay.
How much was that? Was it 8 to 10 million, I think?
I have to go back and have it back.
It was quite a bit.
Yeah. I think that could definitely be one, and it could be, you can have different ones. We've talked about this before, parks and recreation, bond referendum, and put different ones on the ballot, but I definitely think that, and then that also takes the burden off the next board, whoever that is, to say, hey, look, we've already got the funding that was approved with this. Whenever they get sworn in office, the marching orders are there and the funding's there, and just move forward and do it. That would be my recommendation, because we've done a great job with grants and trying to make some connectivity, but we've got these new developments come in, and they're required by our ordinance to put a sidewalk in, and the sidewalk is on their property. There's nothing past that, and this would make the connection for all of that, and that would be what I would like to see. Then we can quit this $102,000 a year that we try to do, and you can't really make doing it that way.
So what would you, the $100,000 in sidewalks, is this, want to add additional sidewalks?
No, what we'll utilize that money for, and I'm not sure we need it, the entire 100, but a portion of it we can utilize for engineering design services for the survey work. And I will say this, once we got to that point of having something on paper, it does facilitate in being able to secure grants much easier for that. And we have been looking at grant opportunities down that corridor to try to connect these pieces.
So would your recommendation be to take $50,000 to hire a consultant or engineer, whatever it would be, and then try to utilize his or her drawings or report to obtain grants, correct?
Yes, and then at least get us to a starting point of, are there areas we can start working towards that direction of Martin Marietta Park? We may not be able to achieve it this year, but.
And then utilize the other $50,000 to repair the sidewalks that we currently have?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of that. I think I've always said we need to repair what we have before we start adding a bunch of new stuff, you know.
You made mention of the communities that were inclusive. Does that include Town Woods and finishing that project?
We're actually have Town Woods under contract to finish this year.
Thank you.
Last, I believe it's about another 600 feet from Wilson to Town Woods Drive.
Thank you.
So is it our direction to staff to put together a proposal for a bond referendum for bike and pedestrian?
I would support that.
Yeah, I definitely would support it.
Yes.
The board recommends moving forward with a bond referendum for
Well,
2020.
I say let's move forward
Yeah.
with getting
So,
some information.
that's right, so
Yeah, exactly.
for 2025,
Mhm.
which, and it's gonna take us a good year with the planning to do this right. And so what we can do is a follow-up at a workshop at some point later this summer. We can start talking about what could be included in that and get your support and go from there.
Including a long time for education. Thank you.
I mean, just in line with what the mayor is suggesting, I mean, we, as a board, and this board, previous board, we talked about fire station hours in West Newburgh. So that could be another referendum question put on the ballot. Not necessarily take everything and lump it all together, have separate,
A la carte.
yep,
Yeah, I agree.
and see what the population.
Because you could actually put Parks and Rec, the completion of the remaining phases as an option. Because I get asked all the time, when are we going to finish Martin Marietta? And we've already got a plan, and that's the good thing. Bike and pedestrian, we've got a plan. Martin Marietta, we have a plan. These things would be plug and play, you know, once you get going.
Okay. All right, on the public works, $460,000 in roadway improvement. For stormwater division, recommending a skid steer mulcher combination and trailer in the amount of $27,000 total.
Let me ask you this while we're here. Roadway improvements, $460,000. How much of that is funded with the $5 license plate fee?
I would probably say none of that,
Okay.
since that 160,000 currently goes into the general fund. This is being funded by Powell bill.
Okay.
That, covering some staff costs and things like, kind of all intermittent. So, and of course, when we get to fees and charges, we're gonna talk a little bit more about that tag fee.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on capital at this time?
Foster, just a quick question on your, it says 1.8 general fund capital. I've got a question, looking at the chart, or the spreadsheet that you gave us, I think that includes the electric vehicle, the vehicle for electric utilities, right? Not just, because I'm looking for, if you look at page five, the amount to finance for the general fund is just under $900,000. But if you look at page
That's
8,
where.
it's 1.7.
This is what that, they're right here, I think. That subtotal, I think, is incorrect.
Oh, okay.
final question, the roadway improvement, is that a result of the survey?
No, it is not. In terms of the amount of funds, no. That is just normal allocation we apply toward that. Now, we're gonna be talking about paving a little bit more coming up, in the fees and charges discussion.
But the survey that was done will be used to utilize this money based off the project.
That's correct, for paving.
Might get a couple blocks out of that.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Would everyone like to take a 5-minute break? And we do have some snacks and some drink.
We're back in session.
Okay, if you will go ahead and turn to page 21 in your book, we're going to be talking about fees and charges. Page 21. We're going to start off in administration. So recommended changes are highlighted in red. The first thing you're going to see is CD, DVD, or USB flash drive. That price has increased from $5 to $10, and basically because we have to provide flash drive, hard to find a good flash drive for $5. So we're having to cover our cost for that. And that cost is basically if someone has a public record request and they do not provide their own flash drive and we have to provide something, we pass that cost along. The next thing we have is a motor vehicle fee. So historically, our motor vehicle fee has been $5. By state statute, we can go up to $30 on this. $5 of that can be allocated towards the general fund, which is what we currently do. Another $5 can be allocated towards transportation, and whether that be having our own transportation network or anything else, we can use those up to $5 for that. The remainder, those other $20, we can use for road improvement projects. And so what we're recommending is to increase this from $5 to $15, with those additional $10 being allocated in a enterprise fund for public street improvements. We anticipate generating approximately $300,000 from an additional $10. So for every $5 we generate $150,000. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. If there's support to increase it, we're happy to increase this. And so basically, when do you get this? When you go to renew your tag, you automatically have a $5 fee there. And so you're paying that when you go to the DMV.
What are other cities doing with that?
Let's see here. Greenville, they've gone up to 30. Jacksonville has gone up to 30. Washington is currently at 5, and they're going through the budget process with us. They're recommending 30. So we've seen a lot of cities that are at the max on that.
So what's in the budget is the $5.
That's correct.
No changes there. So if we were to go to theme, the additional $300,000 that would generate to go where?
That would go into an enterprise fund. Oh, I'm sorry, fund, it would go into a fund balance specifically for road improvements. A capital project fund for roads.
The board's thoughts?
I'm disappointed.
I might see what else we have to do first.
Anybody against it? I mean, it was eye-opening to me when the street survey gentleman made his presentation, and I asked him how much annually should we be spending. I was thinking he was gonna say $1 million, and he said, how much?
2 million.
It was, 2.7 million.
Yeah, 2.7, almost $3 million. So we've done a good job, but we're not catching up, and this would be an opportunity to help catch up.
And this passed the cost directly along to those who actually use the roads as well. All right, we're gonna have each department come up and talk about their request, so I'd like to ask Carrie to come up and talk about her recommendations for cemeteries.
I didn't talk about this at the beginning, but we didn't really set an end time, but typically I think we were shooting for between 4 and 5 to wrap up. Are we doing good with time limits?
You want me to cover all of mine or just cemeteries?
We're just gonna go down this.
All right, so for cemetery fee increases, looking at for the opening and closing fees to increase, and that is due to an increase in contractor charge for digging and closing of those graves. So that's the reason we're requesting an increase on those.
I noticed that some of these, the resident and non-resident fee, we made some adjustments. Some of them are double if you're outside. Is there any reason why we just don't broad brush and do all the fees that way?
We certainly can.
What's the board's thoughts on that? And if you think about our taxpayers are subsidizing things that are used by non-taxpayers in the city, this is an opportunity for us to help recoup some of that. We'll never recoup all of it. I mean, for example, when my son was small, we used to go to Trentwoods and use their park, and I didn't pay Trentwoods taxes, so that's just one of those things. But, you know, from a fee standpoint, it would be pretty easy. I think staff would probably appreciate the fact that everything was a resident fee and it was double for non-resident. You might have any thoughts on that? You agree? Okay.
Double for non-resident, you mean double for non-resident?
Correct. So whatever the fee is for a resident, the non-resident fee would be twice whatever that fee is.
I think that we're gonna have an issue with it, be at our aquatic center. Our rates are already traditionally high. Now, the rates at the aquatic center would not take effect until summer of 2025 because it's changed in the middle of the year. But that's the only one that would be difficult.
I'm not opposed to tweaking it if we need to lower some to get to the point to where it's double. I think that should kind of be the goal, I think. We've talked about it for a while. But even if you need to lower those in residence fee for the apartment center,
What are the future plans for all of the cemeteries, bring them all up to the standard?
As in, what?
Dead trees, fencing, vines growing all over the place. What is the plan for that?
Well, we go through trees and evaluate them on an as-needed basis, you know, cause at times, you know, they may be fine, and then they get a disease and start deteriorating, so those are evaluated on an as-needed basis, unless we see some, you know, that just need trimming. We do regular trimming throughout.
How often are they evaluated?
As needed basis, like, we don't just ride through one of the cemeteries on a given date and evaluate all the trees. It's just like the street trees, it's impossible.
Can you have someone to ride over in the one over there where they're doing the work at?
Evergreen?
Evergreen, yes. Someone called me about that, was sharing some information with me, and I told them that I would share it to the right people to have to take a look at some of the dead trees and the vines growing on the fences and that sort of thing there. You see, there's a lot of tombstones that's been knocked over in there also.
We recently removed one large dead tree in there. It was back in the fall, fence line and repaired the fence in Evergreen. So that was done fall, winter of 23.
I haven't had opportunity, but I told them I would pass it on and then I would take a look myself, then I would report back to them where we are and what's planning to be done.
And some of that is vegetation growing over from the adjacent property owners that we have to go in and cut back.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
What kind of, I'm agree to double the non-residents, but if we do that, can we leave the residents fee alone? Or,
I think we probably would in most cases, but as Foster was saying, there's some that we maybe high already.
well, I'm talking about cemeteries right now.
Oh, yeah. So you're saying,
Leave the residents fees alone and double the non-resident?
they already are. If you look at our current rate, so
Well, you currently, for weekends or weekdays, 4 o'clock for an adult, is currently 500. And they're talking about going to 750.
I see what you're saying. So you're saying leave it at 500.
Leave it at 500 and make the non-residents 1,500.
Or 1,000.
Or thousand.
What is currently, if we're saying double what our current resident rate is, it would be 500.
I thought you were talking about doubling the non-resident rate.
Well, it would be, but it would be in relation to whatever the resident rate would be.
Okay. Just a thought.
So to leave it at 500 for the resident, and then double it for the non-resident is currently 750. So you're saying double.
So it would, the way I take it, it would be 500 for city resident, 1,000 for non-resident.
Okay, so double the
I
500.
don't know, I mean, I was talking about 1,500 for non-residents and leave the 500 alone.
Well, that would be 3 times.
I was doubling the non-resident fees currently.
How much of this is a pass-through cost, opening a grave when it works?
A lot of the opening is pass-through costs. We,
So for example, if it costs us $750 regardless,
the full amount is not passed through. But it has, the fee from the contractor is increasing up where we have to increase our fee.
well, maybe if everybody's good with the double of the non-resident, then maybe instead of going from 5 to 750, maybe you go to 5 to 6, and then the non-resident would become 12. So what I'm saying is you make a little adjustment.
Yeah, residents are already paying taxes on it.
All right, I'm gonna ask the fire chief to come up. He's got one item under fire rescue.
What is it? You know, which one is it?
Acre, over Murray.
This one changes is just recommendation from staff. I think it was actually overlooked in the previous fiscal year as far as making the change from 50 to 75. And that's really what it was just to bring it in line with the other permits as well.
Any questions on that? On the Parks and Recreation?
While she's coming up, I've got a question, on the parking. We talked about this before. Can you just refresh us on what we did with the parking rates? Not the hourly, I'm fine with, that's so new, it's working fine. I'm talking about the wage rates, because I thought the parking committee several years ago made a recommendation that we double what they were at the time, and we never did that. We increased it, but we didn't double it. Do we know where we are compared to a couple of years ago on these fees?
We'll get that for you in just a second. And also in that same line, I skipped one thing under administrative. By state statute, we are currently charging privilege license for beer and wine, full-time wine. And we charge based on what state statute is. And for on-premises malt beverages, that's $15. For off-premise malt beverage, $5. Premise unfortified wine is 15, and off-premise fortified wine is 10. So we're gonna include that in our fees moving forward.
So for a couple of years ago, then, weekday parking rental space was 20, and we increased it to 35 now. And for the 24-hour residential, it used to be 30, and we increased it to 45. So went up about $15.
That's still extremely low.
Still a deal, and the other comment I'll make is, so far, Peggy Park parking has generated very good revenue. The month of May is December was our number 1 month. April was our number 2 month. May is getting ready to be our number 2 month, so we've got basically several more days. We will exceed what we brought in with leasing the spaces before the 1 year's up. And so we're always happy to look at expanding this if there is any desire from the board to do that.
What is the parking across from City Hall? How well is that doing?
It's doing very well, and that's what I was just talking about. Now, you don't see a lot of cars in there during the day. In the evening times, that's when we're making our money. Thursday nights, Friday evenings, Saturdays is when we generate a significant amount of revenue.
Well, we had talked about the parking lot next to Morgan's,
That's correct.
about doing this, but I know that MSD is looking at that plan, so I don't know that, probably wouldn't make sense for us to do something now while they're still working on that. I think it's probably best to see what they come back with, and then we can address that, but, I mean, somebody has a dedicated parking space 24 hours a day in that parking lot for $45 a month. That is a very good deal.
And that expires the end of December every year, or for January.
MSD's looking at Hancock Street also?
So. Not yet.
Just, not yet, yeah, I don't think
Just
so.
that inner core area is right now.
Well, I mean, we could, they're not looking at that, so we could do something there. Is that what you were thinking?
That was my point bringing up.
What's your thoughts?
We could look at it.
And it's, Charlie's got his electric charging stations there. Oh, wait a minute.
Well, no,
You're thinking about the one by the fire museum.
Right.
No.
No, this is the one on Hancock
the
Street.
one on Hancock.
Behind the Chelsea area.
Oh,
Yeah, behind Chelsea,
Oh.
next to,
yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what the uses are there.
I think a lot of the businesses.
It's
around
mostly
there
the
do.
businesses that are in front of that.
Then no.
Yeah, that keeps them off the street.
Right.
But I was thinking about the one by the by the fireman museum, it's so far away, I don't think anybody's gonna pay for it there. Now, the one in front of the DoubleTree, that might be the next thing we look at after the Morgan. Any thoughts there? You walk around a lot.
Well, Bob, the one you're thinking of on Hancock, if you see 1 or 2 vehicles in there at a time, that's a lot.
Right, but I don't know how you would act.
Yeah, I don't think it would make much sense to put anything in place there, not to be generating, it's not used, at least from what I can see.
It's because people are paying
Now,
$45 a month, and it doesn't matter whether they use it or not. That's one reason.
You know, the free lot down by the hotel, that's heavily used, so, I'm sure there would be a lot of talking about charging, but, that's a viable one to look at.
Yeah, the interesting thing, and I don't want to turn into a parking discussion, but anytime people say, well, you need more parking downtown, we need a parking deck, the next question I ask is, well, who's gonna pay for it? Because if people aren't willing to pay $1 to park across the city hall in a premium parking space for an hour, nobody's gonna pay to park on a parking deck, and parking decks are very expensive to do.
Well, I mean, if we, thinking about the next one would be, you know, Middle Street next to the DoubleTree, I think we put that discussion aside until they're done with the tapestry. Then probably have that discussion. I just didn't want to stop the discussion with the, Middle Street parking lot. I think it's good to talk about all of them.
Okay, Carrie?
Okay, so additional fees, we're looking at increasing in parks and recreation, or the aquatic center general admission. Some of this was to raise as well as get away from those $half because we had, the past 2 summers had a hard time getting quarters to make change when people come in and pay. But Mayor, as you were saying, if we need to reduce that and then double it for the non-resident, I mean, I'm fine with that. Non-resident, we get a ton of people from Greenwood that come, Carteret County, Emerald Isle, Swansboro. So we have a lot of non-residents that are coming to use our pool because they don't have one access access to one in their community. So whatever you recommend on that, but I would like to stay away from the $half numbers. And then, I'm proposing a fishing tournament permit fee. We have a number of people that hold fishing tournaments in Lawson Creek every year, and, right now, the only thing they pay is if they want us to open the park before 6 a.m., they pay $25 an hour staff fee to have a staff come open that park. So that means our staff's getting there around 4 a.m. to open it up, and they're only having to pay us $25, or comes out to $37.50 if it's an hour and a half. And so I'm proposing doing a fishing tournament permit fee. That would be $100 residents and $200 non-residents. They're generally collecting money from those tournaments, and they can have anywhere from 50 to 100 people enter those tournaments. So I think it's only they charge more than what they've been having to pay.
And what park was that?
Well, it would be with any, but mainly they use Lawson Creek for these fishing tournaments. Yeah. And I added up what we have on the schedule right now. We've had 5 non-residents tournaments scheduled and then 7 residents.
Would that include them opening the park earlier, or is that going to be in addition to that?
So they'd be looking at $137.50 for a resident and $237.50 if they're non-resident.
Also, one time you talked about an automatic gate at Lawson Street, keep from staff having to go out there and open it, close it. How much, do you remember how much that was?
Approximately $20,000.
And have we looked at, I'm assuming it's an hourly employee, they go down there, sun up and sun down. Have we done an analysis to see how much that costs us? I know there was some concern about if somebody gets inside, how they get out, and that sort of thing, but.
Well, we need to change that to, instead of dusk to dawn, it needs to be a time.
Issue with that, it changes throughout the year, and it's
Well,
different
just
every day.
hang
It's
different
different.
signs up on them, 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock, as the time changes. But, I mean, you can look at 2 or 3 different weather channels and get 2 or 3 different times at sunset, and at sunset, it's still light, so some of these.
If it was automatic gate, though, it could be programmed, right?
It could be programmed, yes.
Last night we got a call after 9 o'clock, somebody was watching the back to get out at 9 o'clock.
Well, I've had a fisherman call me and complain that he got locked in. And I think he said the police came and let him out.
Is that the back section or the main gate?
The
This
back
is the back
section.
section.
So the back section, we talked about maybe where that temporary gate is fixing the issue we were having about moving that to the area that goes around Jack's Island to keep the fishing docks open. Is that a thought?
Well, one of the issues that we have had past that choke point is unsavory activities occurring. And so it's not that those activities are happening in Jack's Island or the Marshall, but they can be happening right behind the restroom at the choke point, or it could be on one of the trails. So that's why the decision was made to put that right there at the choke point to prevent any of those activities. And they have been curtailed significantly, but there are still some issues that police has been addressing,
So why don't we just close the whole park instead of half of it at one time and the other half at another time?
If we close the whole park at sunset, and you're a fisherman, there are gonna be quite a few fishermen that are gonna be locked up in there.
Well, they're already getting locked up in there. I mean, but if you close the park, if you close the park at 9 o'clock, and the sign says park will be closed at 9 o'clock, at least people will say, I got to be out of there by 9 o'clock. Not sunset, and then I go look on WCTI, it says sunsets at 8:27, but then you go to the Weather Channel, it says sunsets at 8:40.
I see what he's saying, so like Glen Burnie Park, when does it open and close?
This with sunrise, sunset, dawn to dusk. And that changes every day, so we can't put like every time, every day a different.
Martin Marietta Park, we do say either dawn to dusk or sunrise to sunset, but we have signs that are replaceable and it's basically on the hour. And the goal is, especially at Martin Marietta Park, if it's sunset at 7:30, the sign says 8 o'clock. It gives people a grace period to get out. So that's what we'll do at Lawson Creek Park.
I mean,
But the other thing, sorry about that, Alderman asked.
No, that's fine. I just think if you put a time instead of sunset, you're gonna have so many people locked in behind the gate.
And the thing about Glen Burnie Park, while the park itself is gated off, there's still access to the fishing, the launch, where that's not.
I see what Alderman Ash is saying though, with Lawson's Creek, instead of having that checkpoint closed at a certain time, we always just close the park.
Close the whole park.
Because I don't know what you're gonna do sitting at the first boat ramp that you were doing sitting at the second boat ramp when it's dark outside. I wouldn't be opposed to that.
We can look at that, if I'm getting direction from the board, we can look at that, it'll be an ordinance update, I think. Close at 11. So Lawson Creek Park currently is scheduled to close at 11 each night.
There's no reason for anybody to be at Lawson Creek Park.
Could you bring up one more issue? I don't have an issue with the fishing tournament permit, but are we setting up an unrealistic expectation for exclusive use? Meaning, they pay the fee, they're the only ones using, and I bring that up because I get complaints now about the fishing tournaments down there, they're trying to do weigh-ins, and people are trying to get in and around them while they're doing that. And so my concern is they don't pay a tournament. Is there an expectation that they're gonna get exclusive use during certain times? And I think you're gonna have to deal with that.
Yeah, and no, there is not.
But
They just might find a spot where they can do their weigh-ins where it's not gonna be in traffic, but you can't close it for $100 and make it exclusively for a fish tournament.
I'm just saying that, I think that's gonna be the unrealistic expectation that Parks and Rec's gonna have to deal with. That's what I'm saying.
I think it's an expectation that the fishermen are gonna have to deal with, to be honest with you.
Right, but Parks and Rec and us are the ones who are gonna get the complaints. I'm not saying that we should be giving them exclusive use, I'm just saying that because they're now paying a fee, we need to
Well,
make
aren't
sure
they paying a
that they.
fee now? They're currently not paying any fee
We
at all?
only pay for staff that open.
Wow, okay.
So that's what I'm saying.
So
Yeah.
most of the tournaments use the front boat launch, right?
No.
Typically, every once in a while, we have some that use the back, but most of them like to use the front one.
Because if you get there, I mean, these things kick off early in the morning. I mean, if
Well,
you
I'm
get
talking
there-
about when they come back.
What I was thinking is if they use, if you and I have a recreational boat and we go there at 8 o'clock on that Saturday morning, all those boats and the trailers are usually
Yeah.
got the front parking lot full, so you can go to the back parking lot. I couldn't imagine putting off at the front parking lot and seeing how busy it is, but yes.
And sometimes there's competition with the park itself and parking, and people will come back there. So I'm just raising the concern that that's something you're probably gonna have to deal with now that they're paying a fee. That's all I wanted to say.
Any other questions on that? All right. Our report, you, on page 27.
Well, he's coming up and asked a question about development services. So our ETJ, we provide permanent services to the ETJ, but we charge the same as they're in the city. Is that what we've always done? That's pretty standard. Okay.
Is it standard? No,
It's not?
not always. It's 50/50.
Maybe some look into I mean, ETJ's not huge, but we provide a service that we get no tax revenue back on, it costs us the same to do it. Oh, George.
All right, got two here. The first is an increase of $50 from $150 to $200 for the permit for a sidewalk cafe, and that is directly related to some additional placards we're going to provide with the, and the second being an encouragement fee per application, and that we have had no fee in the past with the increase of telecommunication companies and fiber installers. We're finding a need to recoup some of our costs on the front end to oversee some of this, and we are going to ask for a $100 fee for that, for the encouragement fee. This is in keeping in line with surrounding communities on the authority for encouragement fees. Yeah, I'm doing refuse. And we'll go ahead and go to the refuse also while I'm up. So we are having an increase in our residential and commercial refuse charges. The landfill has gone up another $1 per ton. So we had a $2 increase last year. We've had a $1 increase this year for tipping fees. And we've also had our contractual obligation to increase with GFL, who's our contractor hauler for residential refuse. And those numbers are reflected in these increases.
Questions on that? All right, we're going to go over the utility fees tomorrow with enterprise funds. So go ahead and move on to general fund, budget and administration. And of course, we talked about where the dollars go. And so, under administration, which covers staff in City Hall, if you will turn to page 45 in your book. On page 45, under administration, the recommended budget for that division is $955,538, which is a 14.7% decrease. I'm not going to go through this. If you have any specific questions, please let me know. We'll address from there. Any questions? All right, we're going to move on. Legal, the attorney was going to be here to present that. He's going to be here tomorrow, so we're going to let him discuss his area tomorrow when he gets here. So we're going to pass on to special appropriations. So in special appropriations, this is on page 50. Highlights for this include $75,000 contractual payment to New Bern Craven County Public Library, $15,158 for Craven 100 Alliance. It states here $50,000, but I believe the budget actually reflects $25,000 for special projects that may arise during the fiscal year, so we did reduce that to $50,000. And of course, if the board has a project that comes up, it will just be a matter of a budget amendment if you'd like to do something. $7,000 for discretionary funding for the mayor and aldermen at $1,000 each, and $2,000 for Christmas decorations at City Hall.
Also, question,
Yes, sir.
how long will we continue to pay the library money?
Forever.
We'll have to pull the contract. There is an agreement in place, and I don't have that information at my fingertips. I can have that tomorrow, and we'll
Okay.
talk about that.
I think we do need to look at that because
We do.
they're going to build another library. And I don't know how that's going to be triggered into that particular contract because they're supposed to, my understanding is they're going to be shifting some resources from the downtown library to this new library out by River Bend. So we need to look at the contract and make sure that everybody's in compliance with it.
Because originally it was started to help them get off the ground. pretty much off the ground and running well.
Boston, before you move on, I mean, if, assuming that we are going to be looking to trim expenses in this budget, the discretionary funding for the mayor's board, that 7,000, would be my recommendation that we eliminate that.
I don't have a problem with it.
Repeat that again, I didn't see.
Look on page, at the top of page 50 under budget highlights, there's 5 or 6 items that are spelled out. Included in that is $7,000 discretionary funding for the mayor's board. Essentially, each board member is given $1,000 to spend as they see fit. Generally within the respective ward. Again, on the assumption that we're going to be looking to trim expenses to try to hold the line on the recommended 3% increase in the tax rate, having even just 7,000 as discretionary funds is not warranted when we're looking to cut expenses. So it's, again, my recommendation that line item be eliminated.
So that's the money that you use, Johnny, for your national night out stuff, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I disagree with that. No, I didn't. Mine personally, I disagree on that. I don't know how anyone else feels about that, but I disagree.
Alderman Brinson, you said you were in agreement with eliminating it?
I think we should go back and look at the governing board too and eliminate travel. That's 2,000 all of them. It looks like the first year of this board, only 3 people used it. Last year, only 1 person used it. You reduce that too. That's, if my math is right, that's $14,000. Yeah, not questioning it, but what is other professional services under the governing board that's been added, $3,000? We tighten the budget, the board ought to take an example.
I think that may be something that was moved. Brenda was trying to align stuff where it made more sense. I think it might have just been a movement from something else, but let me look that up.
Did you have any comment?
I'd like to take into consideration.
Yeah, I don't have a problem moving some of that, but just to eliminate, I mean, I use $60 in 2023, but if there's a conference or an event to go to, I'm not paying out of my pocket to go to a conference to represent the city. So I think, if you wanted to maybe look at both of those and bring them down, I mean, you got $1,000 in discretionary and 2,000 in travel and truck training, which is 3. If you want to cut it in half, say 1,500, you save some money there, or maybe even 1,000. But I think there should be, I mean, if you really want to talk about travel and training, look at that previous tab, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent. So
Where's the line item for the travel?
it's on page 42.
But in an effort of being helpful, we're setting aside $14,000 and we're have a history of using about 2,000 rather than allocating travel for each individual board member. Maybe we consolidate that, make it 3 or 4, and then you know, to make it more realistic of what we're actually using rather than all 14.
We did that, we did that on the previous board, and we found that one or two people used all the money, and then they needed more, and they were asking to borrow from other members of the board, so. We did at one point start looking at specific situations and trainings, and like, we have it listed out for each department. The governing board would have things listed out, but, I mean, there's things that pop up every week, I mean, I get an email about going to an event or something, so it would be harder for us to do it.
So this $60, and this, it looks like 4 of us use, is that where we took money out of our line item to give it to someone else to travel to California or something? Because I haven't used a dime of travel money, ever.
That was 2023.
I've never.
Could that have been, ethics training online? I think it's $60.
It probably was some type of
Probably
training.
online ethics training, you gotta do something.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. And we just told them that we did.
I'd like to maintain the discretionary, certainly we could train the travel.
So for travel, the board support either $500 or $1,000 each?
Well, yeah, why can't we just put a small amount of money in there, and if you want to travel, if you find the need to travel, you just get the board, you just brief the board, and let the board approve your travel. You know?
So it's $14,000 in there right now, and $3,000 was spent in 2023, and $500 spent in 2024.
We could just put $3,000 in there and see how it goes. We'll monitor future board members on any training they want to go through, and if we have to do a budget amendment, we can certainly do that.
That's a good idea.
I agree.
Want to go with that?
And in terms of the special appropriation of the allocations, currently there's $1,000 in there, and so I just needed to hear majority direction on that, how you want to address it.
What page is that?
That is on page 51.
51, the discretionary money, what's on?
I'd say reduce it to $250 each, and then we can give to another alderman if that's what they want for.
You always have the opportunity in a budget amendment if there's something that comes up.
500.
Do what?
500. And you say I could come get some of your money?
Make the case.
I'm sorry I didn't get that for the record.
Let's just do the 500 to be done with it, move on. You know, whatever.
Okay, that's good.
That's good.
500.
Okay.
There is some pretty strict guidelines around it, so it's gotta be relevant to the situation.
Yes, go ahead.
So page 42, you asked about the other professional services for careers. There's not been any expenditures for that last year or this year so far. For 2020.
So so just to reiterate, so page
42,
42,
the other.
line 71, other
Yep.
professional services, $3,000. We haven't spent that in at least 2 years, 3 years.
Right, correct.
So I'd go to eliminate.
What is it for?
We don't know.
We're not sure, they just, I think Brenda just added it every
Yeah.
year.
We don't know, and we
Cut
haven't
it out.
spent it.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to page 52. Peg channel. So we got into a discussion on this last year when we started off this year. So the peg channel does 24/7 programming of its broadcast. Eileen, how many meetings annually?
We have a 75 meeting package. Last year, we did 84 meetings. That includes special called and work sessions.
So we broadcast in an analog signal to, which is Optimum.
Yes.
So it goes to Optimum, then we've also paid with another consultant for this to have a Roku channel. So if you do not have cable TV, and obviously a lot of people don't pay the cord, you can still look at the channel on Roku. You can look on Facebook to see the meetings, and you can of course go to the website, City Creek TV. So we currently get about $25,000 in allocations from the state for a PEG channel. So my first question is, there's a desire to continue with the PEG channel? That'll be the first question I have for you.
I guess my question would be the equipment that we're talking about upgrading, regardless of whether we're broadcasting on the PEG channel or not, how much of that equipment do we need to broadcast on Roku or Facebook or YouTube or wherever?
We're getting ready to answer all that.
Okay.
There are about a dozen pieces of equipment in the rack in the PEG room. Getting rid of the PEG channel only eliminates one of them, which is the transmitter we use to send the signal to Optimum. We would still need the remainder of them to push that signal out to Facebook and to our website and Roku.
So we get probably more revenue back from having that one slot in that mixer
Correct.
that we would have had anyway.
Correct.
So we kind of put our nose off to spite our face. If we said, keep your revenue, we're still having to spend money on equipment to broadcast.
Correct.
That helps.
So the next thing is on the proposed equipment upgrade. Colleen, you want to talk about what that includes?
Absolutely. So our analog system is really similar to the inception of television in the 1950s. Digital television is really the first major upgrade to TV in the last 25 years, and we are proposing an upgrade to digital. Analog signal takes a lot of bandwidth. It's very susceptible to interference, very susceptible to other electronic noise. Digital is a smaller bandwidth. It's more of a networked signal, so we won't have nearly as much cabling. Each year, I have to, at some point or another, replace a cable that's been crimped or no longer works, or the signal is intermittent. Provide us more networked signal versus plugging in a bunch of cables to the backs of the machines. This is also a project to implement closed captioning, which is a requirement of the FCC and the ADA. Unfortunately, we can't select one or the other because we can't implement closed captioning with our current setup. So that's why the project is married this year into a $67,000 upgrade that we're proposing.
So if we do not upgrade, are we in risk of anything?
Not implementing closed captioning could hurt us since it is a requirement. Opting out of closed captioning, we do not need the upgrade in order for the channel to continue in analog.
What about if you look at contracting with someone, where does that come in? How does that interact with what we have going on?
So during a budget work session, it was earlier in this year, Alderman Kinsey, you made a comment about that. So I spoke to one entity that does this, and we talked a couple of times, and then they wanted to come in and look at the equipment, so I turned it over to Colleen. They had multiple conversations back and forth. I think the most recent conversation that you all had was in the last week or so, and we've asked for a quote to see what it would cost to broadcast, and the number of meetings that we talked about earlier, and we have not seen any quotes, so we don't know if there'd be a savings or not. And in the meantime, Colleen reached out to another firm that does this as well. They would not give a price because they said they couldn't beat the price we were currently getting with everything with.
Right.
Right.
They couldn't meet the price.
So one of the other vendors has just been non-responsive, don't know where we are. And that vendor does the county and a few other groups. We just haven't been able to get pricing on that. So I don't know if there'll be a savings or not.
He sent me a text, but he didn't say anything, so maybe he'll reach out to you or Carlene maybe later on.
Yeah, I think the last communication you had, we were supposed to have something yesterday.
Yes.
So, yeah, we just don't have any information yet.
Also, didn't we hear from the county that they have to do things still?
They do.
There's some things that they still have to do, so they still have to have somebody
Yeah,
there.
They have staff that is there, that basically, I guess, does the switching and things like that, and then when the meeting is over with or whatnot, some person grabs that information and takes it back to the station.
But I'm always open to hear quotes and recommendations from people on the outside.
And so we ask individually for quotes. We can do an RFP and see if anyone responds to that. And we really have to do that anyway with this type of thing, because we don't know what the cost will be. But we tried to just have one-on-one conversations with a few folks. We haven't been successful, so. And we can look at doing that in this coming budget year. And I think the big thing is, with the capital request of $67,000, is this something that we're favorably on, or we can punt it down the road?
Let's give this person, sending out the RFP, let's see by Friday if we have heard from them. We'll go from there.
Is the equipment, how is the equipment upgrade, would it affect the quality on Facebook? Would it be a clearer picture?
Absolutely. So I have a list of the benefits C from this upgrade. So we would have a high definition picture across the website and also social media, each of those social platforms. We would see the 16:9 aspect ratio, so we would move to widescreen, which is what most people are watching TV in, versus the 4:3 that we're in now. We would have upgraded agenda and speaker title graphics, which are at the bottom of the screen. I know you're in the meeting, so you might not get a chance to watch it, but one of the other things Swagit does is they bookmark our agenda. So when you move to a new agenda, that's not only put at the bottom of the screen, oh, we're on agenda item 10 now. When you go back and watch the video, if you're only interested in agenda item 10, you can click on that agenda item and the video goes right to it, which is very nice. And I get a lot of feedback on that people enjoy. You no longer have to watch 2 hours of meeting and scrolling back and forth in the video to find out which agenda you're on. We would get a new 3-year warranty on our broadcast system as a result. And as I spoke to before on the networking versus a lot of the cabling we're doing now, we have a lot more reliability on the modern signal, a lot more networked versus cable connection.
How many people are actually watching? Because cable go out a lot at my club, and I was just in my mind just
Right.
wondering how many people are actually watching.
Great question. With the cable, we had no way of knowing, even though Colleen's tried to reach out and get that information.
From Sunlink, when they changed to Altice, I tried with Altice. With Optimum, I tried as well. Since we are a non-revenue generating channel for the cable stations, they don't measure our audiences. So they've recommended that I go to the Nielsen rating system and pay for them to query our audience of 15,000 members to see what their viewing habits are.
So we can track on Roku, and of course we see it on Facebook with the analytics on that. So I think it's safe to say that, and we can track on YouTube as well. Facebook, I think, is still the most popular format to view.
It has come down in the past year or so, hasn't it?
It has. And I don't quite know the reason for that, but yeah, the last, gosh, at least 6 months worth of meetings. We must need something more exciting on the agenda.
Needs some controversy, right?
We're boring, in other words.
Yes.
So, better program.
We're doing everything right.
Any other questions, comments on PEG? All right, we're going to move on to technology, and it starts on page 54. So our technology department They are responsible for all computing, networking, telephone, cybersecurity, video, and related services. And so with that budget, recommended budget this year is $2,033,556, which represents a 15% decrease. Ernest, I'll let you come here. If you have any questions about this budget, he will be happy to answer any specifics you may have.
While he's walking out, we'll get a feel for the board. So it's 10 minutes before. We have several more departments to go through. Foster, I don't know if there's a more expeditious way. If there's any questions about a particular department, you want to skip over it. So I'm asking the board whatever your direction wants to be.
My concern is for the board to be going through almost line item by line item. That's not really our function. City manager has proposed a 3% increase in the tax rate. I'd like to understand where the board is at with regards to that. I'm comfortable with a 3% increase. I've gone through this budget document to kind of look in general terms at each of the departments to see how much of an increase or decrease there has been this proposed budget versus the current budget. Is not much of an increase. I'd kind of like to understand what we're trying to achieve, rather than just continuing to plow through this and nitpick it, a couple thousand here or a few hundred there. I'd rather try to get an idea from the board and then just work backwards. We can always say, well, we're looking, the 3% down to 2.5 or 2, and what's that dollar terms? And then if anybody has any specific items, we can certainly make those individual items.
Okay. I'm not in favor of a 3-cent tax increase. I'm not voting for any budget with a tax increase. That's where I stand on it. If you want some recommendations on how to save that, there's a list here of 1, 2, 3. There's 6 positions in the general fund that's been vacant for 6 months or greater. They equal $378,000, so they're almost 1 cent of your tax increase. And I've got more if you want to go through it that way. But that's kind of where I stand. I'm not in favor. You've got written here, ad valorem tax has gone up 4.7% increase, which provides an additional $845,000 based off of our growth. And your sales tax, you're bringing in $345 extra in revenue. Those $2 amounts, throw that on top of what last year's budget was, and I'm comfortable with that. But anything more than that, I'm not. Anybody else?
Pretty much agree with the mayor. I'm not going to vote for a tax increase.
Based on the information you guys just heard, where does that put us budget-wise, Kim?
If you don't approve a tax increase, then we have to go back and cut 1.5 million.
Starting with which department? All of them?
General fund, nothing.
It's all general fund.
All of them.
So, Mayor, I do want to address your comment on the vacancies. We have copies of this for everyone. I'm sorry, Sonia, you usually like to pass this out. So we have, what you're getting ready to see is City of New Bern vacancies as of May 20th. And so you're going to see the position, the date the position was vacated, their grade in the department. And that covers general fund, sewer fund, water fund, and electric fund. And so, and I think I'm going to basically address the ones on the bottom because we consistently have a rollover of telecommunicators and police officers. It's just a revolving thing, and so each of those positions have a position number. And so whether or not HR plugs someone into a certain position number or not depends on how long that position's been vacant. police officer positions available, 3 telecommunicators. But I think that definitely the 5, I think you're referring to 5 at the bottom, the community economic development and the parks and recreation, are those the ones?
Well, the ones that I highlighted all are 2023.
Okay, so I'm definitely going to address the ones on the bottom here as well. So community and economic development position, that position was vacated on December 9th. We did open that up. I don't think we've had any candidates that really fit our bill in that time. And so one of the things that we are looking at doing is not filling that position, and we'd like to use some of those funds to contract with a company that can help us in terms of reaching out to developers to help push New Bern as a place to open their businesses. With the special project coordinator and the 2 recreation program coordinators, those have not been filled. And then the classification plan was to change those titles appropriately to be specifically toward the Stanley White Recreation Center, because we are going to have staff there. We did not include additional staff, any new staff, and so we're basically reallocating positions that have been vacant to work at that facility. Parks maintenance technician, and I can't tell you why that position's been vacant since January. I don't know if have y'all promoted, have y'all advertised that position?
We have, I've interviewed several people, we had selected a candidate and that did not come to fruition. And we've made several calls for interviews and people either don't call us back or don't show up for an interview. So, that's where we're at right now.
And so, yes, Mayor, to specifically address telecommunicators, I believe we have had 2 telecommunicators that have been out since 2023.
That's right, we had 2 that went through training and simply could not successfully pass our field training.
And so,
When did we added telecommunicators a couple years ago, didn't we?
No, Mayor, we've not added any additional telecommunicator positions.
I'm pretty sure, it might have been before you got here. I'm pretty sure.
Since I've been here, we have not.
Yeah.
So you've operated fine without these 2 positions?
No, we've not operated fine without them. We've been short on every shift, every day. We do not have, not a single one of our telecommunicator shifts have a full complement of telecommunicators. We run short every day.
How many do you typically have on duty? How many are you supposed to have on
4,
duty?
1 supervisor and 3 telecommunicators.
Don't you guys remember we added?
That's been a while
We
back.
did, I think it's been,
It's been a few years back.
Yeah, it was the previous board.
I think it was a suggestion after the ISO grading, wasn't it?
It was Lou's suggestion. It wasn't
Okay.
mine. I mean, if you look back at our population, it is what it is. I know there's some people that don't agree with that number, but our population hasn't changed a great deal. And we went from 479 employees, I think, to 501 in the past several years. And I know one of them was we had a refinement over at Bern Road. That was, 5 or 6. And then we added the telecommunicators. I thought it was the same year that we did that. So. But back to Alderman Prince, he was fine with the proposed budget. Alderman Brinson was not, I was not. How about you three, any direction?
Well, I don't know, I have mixed thoughts on it. I think if you're at the point that you either have to raise taxes or cut services, so which service do you want to cut? Yeah, so everything's gone up. I mean, you pay for your home, your groceries, your gasoline, everything. Well, we're not excluded from that. We still have to pay the same price, I mean, higher prices for gasoline, and I heard, Jordan, thank you. I heard Jordan talking about the price of the chemicals to treat the water has doubled and in some cases tripled. But I would love to see what we can do to get it down as low as possible. I mean, I hate looking at 3 cents plus raising the trash, pickup, and raising the car registration and stuff. I mean, that's a lot to put on.
You have a good point, everything is going up, and, but there comes a breaking point for us as well, that we have to reconsider which direction are we going, and how we're gonna do it. We just have to sit down and just talk with the citizens and let them know what we're up against, and what are they willing to do to help to provide that service. I mean, it's just bringing everybody together. I don't know,
What would happen if we put a 6 months freeze on some of this? How would that help?
I don't know. It depends. He said 6 months freeze.
On some of these positions that have currently been vacant since '21.
Well, here's an issue. So last year, how much did we appropriate from general fund to balance the budget?
The fund balance, $1.4 million.
Because that was primarily because of salary studies. And for example, if you look at the community economic development manager position, it's been vacant for 6 months. So you budgeted for that, took money out of fund balance reserves to balance the budget, and then you're going to try and put half of that back in there because we haven't had a position filled for half a year. So how much are we actually going to end up taking out of fund balance this year when it's all said and done? Do you have a projection on that?
I do not have a projection on that just yet. We just went through our year-end processes of closing out some POs and looking and adding the POs that they need. So we plan to do that once we get your budget.
I mean, that's the hard thing to do because with attrition and turnover, that 1.4 that we had planned on taking out of general fund, we might not have taken anything. We don't know that yet. And then we're asked this year to do the same thing again with the potential tax increase, and when it's all said and done with, that may not be necessary. But that's local government budget.
Well, Mayor, to your point, I'll bring this up. I was asking before the meeting started, how much money, since we just closed out 2023, how much of the budget went back into the general fund? Because at one time, we talked about taking that money and put it into a capital project fund. And so that's a due out that I've asked for as well. Oh, we don't know. I don't know. I've asked the question, but we can find out tomorrow. So, but to your point, we're looking at 24, 25 budget, but we just closed out the 22, 23 budget. So you don't find out for another 6-8 months after the FY closed, and until you don't find out how much you still had until 6 to 8 months after the FY closed.
Yeah, and another thing, I mean, most of the department heads by now have finished purchasing what they budgeted for. Wouldn't you guess?
The majority have.
If they hadn't,
Unless there's an emergency.
Yeah.
Still 6 weeks.
The year has always been, I got some money left over on this line item, maybe we ought to stop. And Hartman used to do that to us all the time. He would stop us from writing any purchase orders unless it was approved by the city manager and finance director at this time of the year. So he would have those funds left over.
We just went through.
And I hate saying that in front of you guys, I really do, but there's not a lot of support here to do a 3 cent tax hike Um, and especially on top of a reevaluation that we just had. So it's got to come from somewhere. But then again, you know, I'll say it, you either have to raise taxes or cut services. Somebody tell me what they want, service they want cut out.
You can't cut your services.
Well, you can. It might not be fun, but you can cut them. I mean, cut out animal control if you want to cut animal control out. Cut out roadside pickup stuff, you know, instead of, you know, you can cut it off. It's just not going to be fun.
Yeah, I've heard that argument back in 2014, and in 2014 and 15, we cut it $10 million. Nobody lost a job, no services were cut. So, because we got more efficient.
Well, let's get more efficient then. I agree.
Well, I certainly would like to see us continue to see what we can trim.
Yeah, you're trimming pennies right now, though.
When we went through, just as I talked about, when we went through this process this year, we have cut quite a bit. And Mayor, to your point, back in 2014, we've had many conversations about this. Over the last 10 years, this city has gotten quite lean. So, sorry, there's not a lot of fat on this bone, in this budget.
And then we need to see how we can minimize as well as possible if we have to go to the tax increase. It's not, again, as somebody said, it's not at 3%, then how we can hold the line at another number.
Many are your employees, and you're going to be right back in the same boat you were in last year when the employees were suffering before.
I don't know whether everybody really looked through the whole budget yet, but if you look at the electric utility, I think that's a good example of really what you don't want to see happen. The city had electric rates in the early teen years that, based on the budget or what looks to be, what was being charged for, the rates were too high. So in the mid-teen years, there were a series of rate reductions that the previous boards approved. Now we are faced with having to make rather significant electric rate increases over the next few years. And the outside consultant is recommending that we look seriously at rate increases of like 5% a year over the next period of 5 years or whatever. So do we want to set ourselves up and set future boards up by no tax increase, and then next year's board is going to be faced with the same issues, probably even more challenging issues, same arguments are going to be made, well, we don't want a tax rate increase. And so we're kicking the can down the road, and a future board is going to have to approve a much more significant rate increase because we, in our previous boards, just refused to acknowledge that cost increase and we need to increase taxes to offset them. I argue every year about incremental increases. And it's hard for me to understand why I can't convince my colleagues the value of incremental increases every year. Because that's what the consultant is now recommending to us for the electric rates.
Well, I'll be prepared to talk about the electric rate discussion tomorrow. But there's also a lot of noise in those numbers as well.
All right, regarding the general fund, I've heard a lot of things on this. Can I get a consolidated direction on what you'd like for us to look at?
Well, I guess the question for everybody, does anybody have any significant recommendations in terms of cuts to be made in any of the departments? that we could talk about. And I'm not talking about, 500 here or 1,000 there. It's gotta be significant if we're looking at cutting a few hundred thousand or up to $1 billion in costs.
How much was the COLA in the general fund?
The COLA for general fund ended up being over $500,000, $514,000.
There's the first one.
So no tax increase at all, or no increase at all in wages.
We've gone up how much in the past 18 months,
In terms of,
percentage wise?
Well, it's, you talking about the pay study?
COLA and merit.
study,
Yeah, the COLA and the merit.
it was 3% last year on the COLA, and 2% on the merit last year on top of the salary.
And then some of that varied based off where people were in the bands.
Right.
So some people could have got a 15% increase.
Correct.
And all that's been fixed with the pay study as of the time that the pay study was completed.
I don't think we should mess with that COLA. We should go in another direction. I mean,
I think the manager's open for suggestions. If you got anything you want to come out?
Good to hear you, because we're always gonna be dealing with the salary deal. County's getting ready to go through a salary study right now.
Who is?
The county. Always our competitors are looking at doing that, so we always have to revisit that. That's just part of doing business.
but I'm gonna go back again. I think we're gonna have to 3 cents in tax increase. And I think that we will be okay.
All right, so you got 2 for it, 2 against it. How about you two?
I'm not breaking the time.
I stated my opinion earlier, so nobody can blame me for voting.
I don't know. I mean, I would rather do everything we could in this budget than raise taxes.
But I don't think we should cut the staff,
Mm.
back. We're gonna have to make that hard decision. I mean, it's like put sneakers on and put your flip flops on.
Is there another amount when it comes to the tax rate other than 3 cents?
So 1 penny equals basically $495,000. Would there be support for a 2-cent increase?
Sound like an auctioneer now.
You're exactly right.
So, we're looking at trying to get this thing balanced.
Right.
Okay?
And-
So the 2 cents seems like it might low.
Because next year, this process is gonna be even more difficult. as we
Each
get to
year
that.
is-
It's
each
gonna be
year.
difficult. And would there be support for a 2-cent?
I'm with 2 cents.
So
Can't hear you.
You were with 3.
No, we
Sorry.
negotiate.
You're
We
still making
negotiate.
cuts. You're still making cuts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We're getting ready to make some,
We negotiate.
we're getting ready to make some cuts. And then I can tell you right now that, yes, we are gonna look at dues and subscriptions, travel and trains. That's not gonna be enough to make us what we need, but we're getting ready to take a very hard look at the capital. And so that's gonna affect departments.
Capital is not that much of a problem, though, is it?
Well,
I mean,
that's also where we can have savings, and yes, I mean, I know everyone wants it all, but something's gotta give here. And I think the last thing I wanna do is jeopardize the human capital part of this. If I get direction and there's no support for a COLA, no problem. You tell me the word and that's what we'll do.
Would you restate your recommendation again?
Would you support a 2% increase? Which means basically, just a,
2 cents.
2 cent.
As opposed to 3.
And that would balance the budget?
We would still have cuts to make. We have approximately $500,000 that we would have to cut from the budget.
But if 3 cents increase, that would balance?
But 3 cents is what he's proposing now.
That's what it is.
So that was still taking money out of fund balance.
Fund balance, that's correct.
So you really need 4 cents to balance the budget without taking money out of reserves.
Absolutely. And the thing is, you know, last year, this year, that's $2 million out of fund balance. Now, we do have a healthy fund balance, but the unrestricted part of that fund balance is approximately $6.8 million. And we really don't want to see that shrink. We'd rather see that grow. And so it's just like in your own home and finances. You don't want to pay for your grocery bill.
Going once, going twice.
I'm gonna stick with the 3 cent.
I'm in the negotiation stage, 2 cents right now. If I say they go up to 3, I go with them. Right now, I'm going with 2. Going once, going twice.
Kind of
I mean,
as a point of order, I think we should have this discussion with our missing board member so that she's on the record of having made a decision.
Okay. Okay, I'm fine with that.
So as it sits right now, you've got, I've heard 3 that are okay with a 3 cent increase. And I'm sure you would be fine with less than that if they were able to work it out, but 3 is your cap.
Absolutely.
I haven't heard anything from Alderman Master yet, other than he wants to see some improvement with 2 cents.
I would rather wait to see how much we can reduce this budget before we discuss how much of a tax increase that we have to have. I'm not in favor of cutting out the COLA for our employees. I mean, even though that would do a penny right there, a little better than a penny, there.
You can't go there.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of that at all. I mean, I'd be willing to raise the tax rate to make sure that we keep our employees. But I think there's some other work that can be done. I mean, you got $348,000 worth of general fund positions that hadn't been filled, some of them since 21, right?
22.
22, yeah.
22.
Those are in the enterprise fund. And again, don't forget, 3 of those positions that you're referring to, that's the fund Stanley Recreation Center.
And are they funded for the entire year? The Science Center's not gonna open until
No,
December.
that's 6 months, or probably 7 months. It's scheduled to open right at the first of the year.
The only place really to make some major cuts if you don't add the increase is capital and payroll.
Well, payroll's 2/3 of your general fund budget. And when you increase it, it's a compound interest. It gets bigger and bigger.
Absolutely.
Well, if we said we want the other alderman here to weigh in on this, then we can carry it over for tomorrow, correct?
We'll be taking the general fund up again first thing tomorrow.
What?
Ernest owes me 2 for getting them off the.
Maybe we need to look at the capital again.
So, to Alderman Crow's point, I don't know if you've all had a chance to look at that, but do you have any questions on any of the other general fund departments? If you do, let me know, and we'll be prepared to address that tomorrow. If not, I've heard what you said about dues and subscriptions and fees, and travel and training.
So let me ask you this, we got plenty of time now. If you're bringing in $5 on the license tag fee now, and that's basically getting lost in the general fund. If you took that, just say 30 for the sake of having a discussion, if you took that to 30, that provides us, how much more? Is that
$750,000.
$750,000. Then could you, how is the PAL bill restriction with that, can we, I know that has to be used for that, so is there any flexibility in the general fund to where you can use some of those additional funds to help cover some of your general fund gap and still stick true to what you have to do?
I don't think there is, because with House bill funds, we're using that for those items that we legally can use it by statute. And that- I think there was a comment made earlier on when it came to reduction of services, a curbside pickup of white goods and things like that, and that's not general fund, that's an enterprise fund, so that wouldn't affect general fund budget.
So my last question for now, can you explain to me one more time, Foster? I asked you about this yesterday, but you look at page Roman numeral 3. It says our property valuation is 4.9 billion, and that has provided us with an additional $845,000 in revenue.
Yep.
And on the next page, the additional 3% in sales tax has provided us an additional $345,000.
Go to page 2 in your handbook. This is going to be a general fund budget summary here we're going to talk about.
Okay.
And so, on page 2, you'll see the 2024 adopted budget. That was $48,943,720. And so, and we're going to be going line by line on some of these, so you'll get a better idea. So on the ad valorem taxes, last year, or this current budget year, the estimate's $18 million. This year, we're estimating $20 million. Now, that includes the 3-cent tax, and it also includes the estimated growth of $830,000. Now, when we get to the sales tax, here's where some things changed. The estimate for this current year's budget was $11,750,000. Based on what we've seen so far with the disbursements, it's actually, we're going to collect $11,300,000. We're still pretty good on our estimate for this year of $11.7 million for the proposed budget. Then when you come down to proceeds and debt issuance, last year in revenues, we looked at $3 million in revenues. This year, based on what we're planning on financing, it's only $1.8 million, so there is a difference in that. And then when you look at fund balance appropriated, last year we allocated $1.4 million. This year we're proposing to allocate $580,000. So you've got to look at the numbers as a whole for this. There are some changes. Even though ad valorem taxes and state taxes have increased, some of the other numbers have changed, or the estimates from this current year are not going to come true.
So if we appropriated almost, 1.4 million last year, is there any indicator that provides us how close we are to that number? I know you can't tell us the real number until everything closes out. Any tea leaves that you can give us on that?
I'll tell you.
Because here's my thought. My gut tells me it's going to be far less than 1.4 million.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So if that's the case, then why don't you just allocate that much out of general fund balance this year to balance the budget, which is your 3 cent? And history shows that you're not going to spend all that.
So we would be looking at allocating $2 million in fund balance to balance this budget.
I still think you need to tighten your belt some.
But basically, we'd be looking at $2 million to.
I think you can do it at 1.5.
We'll certainly look at it, but again, what I say is, the last thing we want to do is start pulling from our savings account to balance this budget. And to your point, Mayor, I don't know what we're going to return to fund balance yet, and probably won't know for a little bit, but Kim may be able to get a decent estimate on that.
But 2023, we do know.
pose this question.
Sure.
Last year, we as a board approved the tax rate increase.
We did what?
And that
We-
was
we-
with,
The revenue neutral was at 37 and change. We rounded up, we rounded up to the whole penny.
right, a minutia of an increase. And that resulted in us having to use that 1.4 billion of surplus.
Correct.
Not sure how best to ask the question. I'll let that down. I'm not sure how to ask it. It's just, I have to agree with Bob, is that you maintain a surplus, a healthy surplus, hopefully. And pray that you don't need to use it. But you want to have it there. If you start chipping away at that, 1.4 million last, 2 million this year, whatever the number might be, because God forbid, we don't want to increase taxes. The population understands that taxes need to go up. It's just a matter of how much.
Maybe I need to hang out with you some, because I haven't felt the first citizen yet that's told me they're fine with tax increases.
But they understand it. They may not, but they're not here. We are. And they understand that with cost increases and with them wanting to have the level of service that they receive from the city, they gotta pay for it. They may grumble about it, but they understand the need for it. And for us to, and excuse the use of my language, pander to them by saying, oh, we're not going to increase taxes, we're doing them a disservice, we're doing us a disservice, and we're doing the staff a disservice. Cost increase, we need to increase taxes to some level to offset those costs. Or, as Alderman Astor indicated, let's start talking about service level reductions, staff reductions, whatever to achieve no tax increase. Maybe what we're providing in services to the city is too much. Maybe we need to look at trimming the total offering that we're making to this community. So what do we want to look at trimming? What services, what programs are we willing to cut to achieve no tax increase?
My closing remarks is everyone has to share the burden in order to be successful. You do it at the gas pumps, you do it at the market. Why can't we do it here?
Put that in quantitative terms. What are you saying? What are you recommending?
We have to do the tax increase
Well, I agree.
where everybody can share their burden together. When you go to the store to shop for your home, no one goes to pay with you, you pay and feed yourself. We have a service that we render to the public. They have to share a part of this burden along with the prices of food, the prices of gas, just the price of living in general.
All right, what do we charge for health insurance for employees?
We do not charge anything to our employees that is the benefit of being city employee. We do pass along a charge to the spouses and the dependents of those employees.
What do our benchmark cities do?
Let me see here, I do have this information that's here.
Because that, I don't think is taken into consideration with the salary study, is that correct?
Correct, it was not. So we do have some benchmarking data from Wilson County, Morehead City, Havelock, Jacksonville, Statesville, Kinston, Goldsboro, Wilson, Rocky Mount, and Craven County. And Tanya, you have really gone over this, you know better than I do. Why don't you come up? So in terms of employee contributions, what our other cities are charging versus what we are, why don't you cover that?
So we did some surveys, and so did Gallagher, and out of the 11 entities we surveyed from my office, 4 of them do not charge any premiums or contributions for employee coverage. 3 of 11 don't charge anything for employees if they participate in some type of biometric screening, wellness activities. So 7 out of the 11 don't charge.
Who are the 4 that do? Do you know that by chance?
Yes, so Jacksonville does, Kinston, Goldsboro, and Greenville.
And how much do they charge?
Let's see, Jacksonville is charging $52.32 biweekly. Kinston is charging $65 per month. Goldsboro, it depends on whether you are a smoker or a non-smoker, fusions are. So it is $50 a month if you don't smoke, $110 a month if you do smoke, and that is for where they have the co-insurance, the 80-20 plan, but then for the 70-30 plan, if you don't smoke, it's $25 a month and $85 if you do smoke. And Greenville, let's see, Greenville actually depends on your salary range as to what they charge. So with Greenville, if you make less than $32,278, no, I'm sorry, less than $32,278 for the, I'll just give you the core plan. They charge $21.61, $32,278 to $46,950. They charge $23.72. If you make between $46,951 and $61,623, it goes up to $28.07. And if your salary is greater than $61,623, they charge $32.40. Now, it might be a little bit more if it's the enhanced plan, but I won't go over that unless you. Theirs is the only one that is actually depending upon what your salary range is.
So if we were to look at doing something like this, we could not start that until the new plan year, which always starts in January of each year.
Give them a 2% COLA and then start charging them for their insurance. You might as well do away with the damn gone COLA. If you're going. Not an option as far as I'm concerned. Okay.
How does anybody else feel about that? 2 noes?
Yeah, it's hard to really make a decision one way or another without really understanding what the financial impact might be and what level of savings could potentially be achieved, right?
But it doesn't matter to you, right?
Listen, I don't want to charge our employees for insurance. And just like I don't want to do away with their COLAs. I think I don't want to burden our with this problem. I know what you
Out
want to say.
out of all due respect to our employees, all of them sitting behind me and those that are gonna watch this, we implemented a full salary study that didn't take into consideration benefits. So you can't use the argument that everybody else is at a certain level, and we've gotta bring everybody up to that level when you're not looking at the big picture. And the big picture is you've got a neighboring city that's charging $100 a month for insurance. Trying to help provide you some direction, so. I think you got 4 people that's willing to approve a tax increase, that's what it sounds like to me. If you sharpen your pencil and tighten your belt a little bit, some savings, some more savings. No, we haven't heard from one. But I do know that Alderman Best is a huge advocate of our employees. She always has been, so I'm not speaking for her, but she always stands up for her employees, because she is a former employee.
Foster, do we know, is Barbara going to be here tomorrow?
Yes. Told me she was gonna come after a pre-scheduled appointment, but I guess that went late, but she will be here tomorrow.
Can ask staff a question, is it too difficult to go back, say, the last 5 or 6 years? So the sheet that we have, the City of New Bern staffing position history report, is it too difficult to provide that going back past 21, 22?
It's online.
So if you could provide that, I think it would be enlightening to see the number of employees we've had, how many we have now, and then compare that to our population growth.
And let me ask you, this may have already been discussed. How much fun would it be to get the amount of money, let's just say that we froze everything right now, other than our obligations. How much money would we be able to save for the remainder of this year? Is there any way possible that that can be estimated? I mean, we got to pay electric bills and gas and stuff like that, but do we have to have all other things that weren't budgeted for that might be used the remainder of this year with?
I want to share, we went through our year-end closing process of preparations, and all staff were asked to take a look at what they had, close out the POs that they have not used or don't plan to, those open blanket POs, order the things that they know they need, and they were really good stewards of our money, of your money, because they didn't blow the budget out of the water, they didn't spend it that way. It was very clear that if it's not something, don't go out right now and purchase something that you did, a bunch of supplies, for example, that you're planning on using for next year. You didn't use it for the year it was intended, it's done. So they really understood their assignment and, you know, were able to clean up that budget for us and not just go make purchases because there's funds left in their budgets. So that's now the next step, is to go through and see where are we at. Let's do some comparisons. Other than emergency, those contracts that Public Works has out there, we can definitely take a look at it. I just have not had a chance to do so.
I see it, but each year, when I came on, it was like 400 and some employees, and each year continued to grow and increase. So that means costs went up each time.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, and I don't know, I'm just, it's only because I know this one. I'll talk about fire department, fire suppression supplies. Everything that was budgeted for in fire suppression supplies in last year's budget should have been purchased by now.
Right.
So how much money is left over in fire suppression supplies that traditionally, or in the past, I can say that money was like, ooh, I need 3 more of these and 2 more of those, and That's when Bill Hartman put a stop to it, when he saw that kind of stuff happening. And he made it a point that anything that wasn't an obligated expense or necessity had to have special permission
Yeah.
from, do what?
No, I'm just repeating what you're saying in my head. Okay.
Had to have permission from the manager or the finance director before that the expenditure could take place. And we saved a lot of money that way.
They did that all year?
No, just this time of year.
Yeah. They've
Cut
done
off
that right
June
now.
1st or something like that, or May 15th, he would cut it off, and if you hadn't bought it by now, you obviously don't need it.
It's been cut off since May 1st.
Okay?
And we've also looked at some of the capital requests, some of the departments asked for. They had enough money in this budget, we went ahead and had them purchase it now, so it doesn't impact the next budget.
Right. So how much gonna carry over? How much money are we gonna have left over out of those expenses that you can't borrow?
That's my next step, that's just the.
So you can find that out.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll
I
talk
will
about
work
that.
on it.
Okay. Then I make a motion again.
So I think you got public comment, and that's it.
Okay, any more discussion amongst the board? Okay, item number 2 is public comment. Anyone make a comment on the journal? Okay, next I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, we have to recess, because we still didn't finish.
Oh,
the,
recess until tomorrow?
No, tomorrow's a different
Yeah,
meeting.
Yeah,
it's
but
different.
are we doing the general fund?
It's on the agenda for tomorrow. No.
Marvin Chandler is in our red line. Are we good, Mr. Fill-in clerk?
We're good.
Okay, so I entertain a motion to adjourn. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?